Hello and welcome to episode 458 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, the place where the small press makes one hell of a big noise. My name is Vince Hunt and joining me as always is the creator of the comic series Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
The man who just asked me to make a comic or some sort of medium about his life and who he wants to be in his life. And
say what it was.
I can't. Don't make me say it, Tony Esmond.
It's too early in the show.
It's too early in the show.
Hang on till the outro and we'll say it then.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
You've got all that time to think of a proper title for it, Tony.
You can see my face. I've got one.
Yeah, that is something to look forward to. And another thing to look forward to is our lovely guest this week. It's not just three amigos. We've roped in another friend of the show, artist of Late Nights and Prawn the Jumbo Shrimp, which we talked about fairly recently. It's our pleasure to welcome back to the show the one and only Matt Strott. Welcome.
Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for having me back. It's been a while.
Good to see you, man.
It's a pleasure, man.
It has been a while.
Too kind to my comic.
Not at all. Yeah,
it's great.
You sort of last time we spoke to you was obviously a few years ago. It seems like every time we have someone back on the show, it's been a couple of years between.
I think it's been 2017. I think was when I was on last.
Wow.
Really?
It was right after Late Nights with John Late.
Yeah, which was also fantastic. You need to check out.
Thanks.
But like you had a bit of a break, yeah, and then you got back into the art chops, and you've come back with a bit of a vengeance with the new book, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been a rebirth of sorts. Like I've come back, I think, better and stronger than I was before. So after Late Nights, I kind of took a break, which I'll get into later.
Yeah.
But so I took a break, came back, and I'm feeling good and feeling better than ever.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
That's a good thing to hear.
Also, unfortunate that you're now in a WhatsApp group with me and Cliff.
Yes.
So it was nice knowing you, Matt.
Yeah. Some of the stuff Tony sends me through.
Yeah.
You're one to talk. You're the worst of all, my mates.
I think cover my face there.
Yeah. Sometimes when we get messages from Dan Butcher, I suddenly wonder what is his browser history like. I sometimes I delete them before I even watch them.
I got the preview on my. You get that preview on the iPhone. It was just from. It said Dan Vanguard, which I got you on my phone. Dan Vanguard. Be careful, NSFW, and that's all the. And I was going to say I want to take that and put it on a T-shirt.
Yeah.
It was NSFW.
It was. Yeah.
But he's always safe for this show. Is our lovely Butcher.
Yeah. Reasonably safe, I guess.
Reasonably safe.
You're never entirely safe, but
he's like
you can edit it out if I go too mental.
Never.
Like a lube and cucumber bought at the same time in the supermarket.
Well, that was that didn't take long, did it, for this episode?
No, that went badly. That was me again.
Good thing we got all that in before the sponsorship, eh?
And we
they'll be pleased.
Yeah. Our lovely sponsor, Global Comics, who stick with us.
They love cucumbers
through thick and thin, and genuinely they are a great service and a great place to find your digital comics. There's a huge library of titles available on the Global Comics site and app, and thousands of indie creators, hundreds of publishers like Image Boom, Tokyo Pop, TKA Studios, Source Point Press, Humanoids, to name a few. I mean, literally, I could do a huge list of publishers on there, which is usually how I browse. But the catalogue is growing all the time. Around this time, the chaps usually mention something that they've seen on there that seems quite interesting. What have you got this week, gents?
Well, Vince, can I ask you this? Do you like Cullen Bunn?
You know.
Do you like horror comics?
You know. Yeah.
Do you like Catholic priests?
What?
Well, you might like Ghost Law from Boom, which is on there.
Do you know what? I've looked at this. This has got some really nice covers.
It's on my list to read. Yeah, it does. The woman on it looks like she's whistling on the first issue, but I'm going with it. Maybe she is.
But how do you look? She looks like she's whistling, but it's a comic cover. How do you
whistle on a comic cover? Well, you can find out by going and looking at Ghost Law on Global Comics.
Nice. Professional. Dan.
Well, I was out on the train reading Global Comics.
You were out on the train?
Out on the train?
Yeah,
were you on top of the train?
No, I was out
like
out
Tom
of my
Cruise.
house,
He was out of his house on a train.
The guy tapped me on the shoulder and went, Global Comics is good, but they don't do guided view like Comixology did. So I slapped him in the face and went, "You're fucking wrong." They do panel to panel. They do panel to panel enabled, and you can update that your own and your own comics when you upload to Global Comics. Then
I bet you did this face. didn't you, when you said that, Nick?
Yeah. I'm not describing that face to our audio listeners.
He said, "I'm really sorry," and he sat down.
Yeah, but he did.
And the thing is, Dan could slap him in the face and hold his reading device of choice because he was reading Global Comics on the app.
Yeah.
Which means that he can read his comics, slap a complete stranger in the face, and then also follow creators, set reading status filters.
I'm so disappointed because that actually works. That's why I'm disappointed in that segment.
I know, but it's just... I just have that, you know, that
it
video,
was beautiful.
you know that comedy sketch of that
wrong.
bloke that sort of smacks a kid and the parents complain to him and he starts smacking everyone. I imagine Dan Butcher with like an iPad in one hand and just smacking the whole train carriage.
I've discovered the Fast Show reel this week with the bloke who's the artist. Look at those clouds.
Yeah.
Let's sketch some black. Lock
me in the cupboard and feed me pins. But if I'm in that
a little
cupboard,
bit of black in there. So no.
No.
Sit
But
down.
if I'm in that cupboard, then I can obviously pick up my iPad and read Global Comics.
Yes.
And certainly
That feels wrong but right.
as an indie comics creator as well, it's good to know that there's
He
loads of
speeds
great
up when we get bad.
great
Matt, 'cause he
tools
knows
for
he's gotta
indie
get it out.
creators to help with publishing, marketing, and more. And it's seriously, it's great. Even like customer service is really good. Like if you know,
It is. I've
the
experienced
app's
that
always being
recently.
updated. They're always like making sure that everything's working. And if there is a slight bump in the road, let them know, and they're immediately on it. It's really good customer service. So whether you're an avid comics reader, creator, or maybe you're just someone new to the hobby and just want to check out some great stories, if this show is why you wanted to start comics, the hell's going on? Do you know what I mean? And Global Comics is the place for you. So you can find the app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and go to Global Comics, that's comics with an X.com. Now, we record on Zoom, and every time Tony holds something up in front of the camera, it's a toy. But what is that, Tony? Is that...
What is
That's
that?
from Hellboy, the movie.
Oh, it's the clockwork.
Right.
Yeah.
Where's his mask?
I've lost it.
Oh, classic action figure maneuver there. You know...
I'm sure you can get a spare on eBay, T.
I mean, how
Probably.
many of us have got an action figure that's missing, like, the sword or, like, the axe? I mean, how many of He-Man's axes do you think went missing in the 80s? Or his
Loads.
shield? You know?
I got gifted a Neo from the Matrix figure, and he comes with about five sets of guns. I'm sure I've only got like two knocking around.
Nice.
But so it backs up your story entirely.
They were halcyon days. Halcyon days indeed. While Tony's amusing himself...
No, Matt was amused too.
Yeah, well, yes.
Very amused.
Yeah. But they were they were golden days, halcyon days, and this week we've got a bit of a topic that we're going to get into in a bit that's about like the golden age of comics. Now, if you've fallen
No,
for
technically not.
well, exactly. If you've fallen for my clickbaity title that may have said the golden age of comics has arrived, then I've fooled you again.
Yes, we got you again.
Twice.
Can I give credit where credit's due to the person who coined this phrase, or certainly where I heard it? So Vince Bond sort of used it as a throwaway term this week, or a couple of weeks ago on 11 O'Clock Comics, where he said, well, that's your golden age.
Yeah.
And that's where I thought, I know, that makes a good little subject for us.
Yes. So we're going to get into that very shortly. And certainly we want this is another topic where we welcome the entire community of comics and certainly the ACP community to keep the conversation going. And I know this particular topic, everyone's going to have their lists of things. You know, some of our answers may surprise. They may be exactly what you thought they were going to be. But we're going to have a lot of fun discussing it, as well as another couple of other things that we've got some more fun to come later in the show.
Surprise guest.
Yes. There's a little bit of extra audio as well that we're going to do a little bit later. So look out for
Dan
that.
recorded it sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
As I often do.
Are you on the floor now, Dan?
No, I'm in the old...
Is that a new chair you've got?
No, it's the Batman chair of my son's.
Okay.
So it's all
nice.
good.
I honestly thought that story was going to go somewhere else, and it just
No,
stopped-
it's no
stopped
story. It's
completely
pointless
dead then, wasn't it?
story.
Stopped it,
Pointless
It's a
story.
bit different from him
Can't be.
climbing on the top of a train, isn't it? Reading his comics and slapping.
Apparently when he's
people.
out on a train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the end of Mission Impossible 1, but with a comics reading app.
Yeah. I'd
If
love
only
to see
it got
that.
that far.
I want to see fan art of Dan Butcher like
running
Ethan,
with his hands like this.
Ethan Hunt, yeah, holding onto
Didn't
a
Tom
plane,
Cruise run?
holding onto a plane and reading comics with the other hand.
You're reading the Global Comics app.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, have we done that? But ad, by the way, yeah.
Oh yeah, we've done that ad, but I'm
Oh,
just
good.
thinking, I'm just
I never know when we're in the middle of it. Sometimes.
I just well, here's a clue: we're never out of it.
No, good.
Because we go.
We're always
so
selling
many
our
segues.
souls.
Yeah. Oh dear. So there's going to be lots of fun, obviously, this week. Before we get started, though, I think as we're recording this, we're going to make we're going to have a lot of laughs and a lot of fun this week, and obviously talk a lot bit about comics. But comics is in a very sort of comics community is a very difficult, dark place at the moment, which we're not going to jump into it.
Yeah.
If you're aware of it, you know why. And it's been, I think, overall, I mean, speaking for us, we're all very saddened by it on all
That's
sides.
the main effect is Adam Newman.
Yeah. So it would be. I mean, I will say, you know, I've been thinking a lot about this all week. I didn't want to write any words for it. I didn't want to come across, you know, didn't want to do anything like that. It was just one of those. This show and this community is all about putting forward positivity, and there's you got to be one of the good guys because there's far too many of the bad out there. Our friend, we can say that now. Our friend Garth Ennis said that, and it's a difficult time. So if there's anyone that's been affected in any way by a lot of the things that are going on, but not just in the comics community, we're talking, this goes beyond everything as well.
Yep.
Mental health is obviously at the forefront of a lot of things, and that's why we've chosen to support Mind and everything. So if you yourself, or if you know someone is struggling, straight out the gate, we just want to give you the number for the Mind charity, which is 0300 123 3393. Did I get that right? 0300 123 3393.
Yeah.
I definitely want to make sure I got that right. Because I think
that's, to be fair to our listeners, that is UK only. So there will be the equivalent in whatever country you're listening from.
And certainly, I think now is the time for people to share these sort of places to help people. Because it should be
you can always just reach out to someone and then you're all right, mate, or whatever your equivalent term is.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can. Some people can be in isolation, man, and just don't realise.
We had a bit of an ad hoc drink and draw on Friday, and that was the reason people were sort of feeling a bit on edge about it all, about the sort of situation, and maybe not as much the situation, just the fucking rattling on of reactions to it that seems to be never ending. Yeah. So we thought, let's just have a chuckle. We all got together and had a drink and draw, and it was very successful. Yeah, it was a good laugh.
And like, it's obviously the overall bigger, larger comics community. There's going to be a lot of people shouting this, that, and the other. Whereas we just want to say, if you're struggling, or if you know someone that's struggling, just reach out for help. And we're going to do what we can over this show to entertain.
I think the thing is, if you don't mind me saying, V, I think the thing is about comics is it's quite an insular, introverted hobby.
Yeah,
it's completely. Not designed to be, because you look at a comic and you read it, and that's the hobby. Let's face it, it's not designed for people who are sort of. It's not like theatre, or it's not designed for people who just want to be out there chatting to people and singing songs and everything. Yeah. It's a lot of quiet people who perhaps don't necessarily always want to reach out.
That's why conventions are such a boon to people as well, isn't it? Or creators. And so many creators that we've met that it's sort of like, oh, I'm around my people. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like,
Round to you.
Besides being introverted too, a lot of artists are sensitive people too that take things in greater emotional feeling, and small things can mean a lot. And just remember that everybody's human. And everybody, the world is gray. It's not black and white. And don't be so quick to judge and condemn people, or you never know what somebody's going through. Just they're human. Everybody's a human at the end of the day.
And congratulations if you found a perfect person, because I never have.
What are you talking about? So, I've been here for years,
baby.
But on all sides, there's it's all about responsibility, and just be good people. Just help others if you can.
How do you? I know we kind of were saying like comics is making it as kind of like a very insular and kind of lonely kind of thing, especially if you're an only creator. Like, yourself. You do everything, didn't you, Matt, on your comics?
Yeah, the
So
100% this time was 100% me. The first time was me and John Late and Ken Reynolds did lettering.
how do you
But
find it? But just doing all the stuff your own. You got no. Have you got a sounding board you can fire ideas back and forth from?
not really, because like when I tell my family about my comics, they're like kind of giving me the like, oh, that's nice. Like nobody really likes
totally.
comics like I
Same.
do.
Same.
But my wife is great for like the technical, and she's an English major and used to be a communications person, so she's like the speaker. Whenever we meet people in the real world, I'm like, you want to be talking to my wife, because I'm the guy who just sits and is very quiet and introverted. But yeah, I find that's the way I work the best. Is I have a little studio in the basement, and I need to be away from people, and it just drains me socially when I'm in public too long, or like I never thought I'd be doing a podcast, and here I am the second time doing it. So I'm trying to do better at it, but just generally, I prefer to be alone.
Yeah, and even a situation like this is a weird kind of bubble that's out of the reality of, because we all know each other and things like that. So it's like a phone call between friends.
Very small community.
Yeah. But I do think that the other side of that, man, is I don't trust anyone who doesn't enjoy their own company. Do you know what I mean? I very much do enjoy just being alone. I think part of that is comics, maybe, but I think I don't trust anyone who just wants to be out there chatting to people all the time. I think it's a natural reaction, especially these days.
Happiness within yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Happy with who you are and what you are.
And one thing I just thought, I haven't really thought about it before until we were just discussing this, is I think the numbers are few and far between if they have a family, like the entire family, are all into comics. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think most of the time, the comics creator, all creators, you could have like couples that are comics creators and stuff, but their larger family probably are like, oh, that's exactly that's nice. We don't understand it. So when you go into this field, it's almost like you're stepping off the path of what
up against it.
But it can be like you say, Tony, like being in your own space and creating such a wonderful thing. I myself, I don't like people. No, but it's very much. I'm comfortable in my own company.
How many writers we had on where they said, "Oh, I work in comics," and they say, "Oh, can you draw me a picture of this character?"
Yeah.
I'm a writer. I don't do that.
I think a lot of us feel that oh, do I really have to go out? Do I really have to meet these guys at a convention? Do I really have to record that podcast? But when you're in the depth of it, it's fun. People forget that sometimes. And
I don't know about you guys, but as a creator and an introvert, I find that comics are a way to release negative emotions and channel any problems that I have, like had a bad day at work or something's going wrong, escaping through the art, and you create this fantasy world, and it's just a way to channel negative into a positive. I feel, and it's been that way for me ever since I was a kid. I was kind of a solitary kid, and I would often draw by myself when things were bothering me, or
art is a very therapeutic thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's therapeutic. Very good.
Yeah. Comics is home as well for a lot of us, isn't it? Comics is the place we go. And I think, without naming the names of what's happened, but I think that's the problem with the person who's at the centre of this, because comics was everything to him.
They got stripped away.
Yeah. And they got stripped away. Comics means the absolute world to me. Outside of my family, well, a couple of people, exception, but the outside of my family, comics is probably the most important thing in my whole life.
And before we move on to the rest of the show, I think as this podcast, we've been very fortunate, and I think this goes for the Slack group and obviously all the people beyond it that aren't on it. There is a wonderful and just supportive group of people that's part of this podcast community, which I just want to give a shout out to all you people out there, because every one of you is just amazing and would help someone out.
I mean, massive thumbs up to the Slack as well. Yeah. Everything, a very difficult place this week, and everyone was very reasonable. On there. Yeah.
There, in situations like this, there's no right words. There's certainly. I'm in no place to speak on it properly or to point any kind of fingers. It's just one of those. Just overall, and this goes beyond comics, I think everyone has a responsibility and we just got to be better as people. I think just moving forward, and hopefully lessons will be learned. Hopefully things will be highlighted. But
nobody's too tough to reach out, man. That's
Yeah.
I think one of the main problems at the moment is
Yeah.
70 was it? I've just seen the numbers for 2023. 76% of suicides were men, and I think it's because certain men think they're tough and they don't or shouldn't reach out.
Yeah.
But I think you do need to, even if it's just to your mate. You know, I think it's very important.
Yeah.
There's definitely a social stigma. I'd like to think that that's kind of being changed and amended.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Awful.
to sign off this this serious bit of the show, we just want to sign off to all the people listening and the community. I know we make a joke of it, like at the end of the show, but we genuinely love you all, and we hope you're all doing all right. You know, I know it sometimes comes across as a bit of a thing, but like genuinely, reach out to someone if you need to, and just love comics.
And also, there's the Mind website. If you don't need to reach out, go and donate.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of our comics raise money for Mind. You can go and donate there as well. Yeah.
So, so with that in mind, I know I just used the word mind again. That wasn't a pun. That wasn't a pun. I didn't mean that to be a pun.
It's that sort of marketing thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Let's jump in to the topic of this week before the show towards the last third goes downhill in a dramatic way.
Close off, everyone.
What?
What?
Don't worry, Dan. You haven't been wearing any this whole time.
Limber up.
Dan's the only person. If you ever go away and stay in a hotel with Dan, when you knock on his door, he's the bloke who gets undressed to answer it. You know, most of us will put some trousers on. Dan actually takes his clothes off.
Give me a second. I just got to take my trousers off.
Oh dear. So how do we want to start this, Tony? You briefly touched on it.
Yeah. So Vince Bond from go and listen to 11 o'clock. They're great people. I'm seeing them in a couple of months. Commented. It was like a throwaway comment during the conversation, but that's your golden age, and it got me thinking. You know, you think about things as you drive along, and I thought, okay, there is the golden age. We all know what the golden age of comics is. You know, the birth of Superman. You know, Dex Comics onwards. But there's also, from a personal point of view, what is our golden age, and using it in a more sort of wider term. And I began to think, what was my golden age? And it began to play on my mind.
Just to clarify this, to give it the legitimate dictionary term.
Good.
The golden age, in the Cambridge Dictionary, is a period of time, sometimes imaginary, when everyone was happy or when a particular art, business, etc. was very successful.
Good. Okay.
We shouldn't look up the Urban Dictionary version.
No, don't do that. Don't tempt him.
I
can see him. His hands moving like he's typing something.
Alan Partridge watching porn. I can see it in his glasses.
Don't open that drawer. That was there when I got you.
Yeah. So I thought, when was that sort of birthing point to me? And nostalgia is a big thing as adults. We still go back to that period, don't we? I was just showing you guys some Action Force comics before we came on, and a lot of people, when I put them on our Instagram account, people were going, "Oh, bloody hell, this was a real formative bit." I suppose formative maybe is a better term, but it just got me thinking as golden age sort of thing. So I messaged you guys and said, let's just think of three things which are sort of, we always go back to, that grabs us around the heart. We think about it a lot. It's still the sort of home to us for comics, reading or creating, can be either. And I thought, let's see what you want to do. So what should we do, V? Should we get Matt to go first? Guess first?
Should we put him on the spot? Why not?
Yeah, fuck it.
All right. Just toss me in the deep end.
Yeah.
All right. So when I thought about this topic, like Tony said, I go back to my formative years and like what got me into comics. What do I love about comics? And for me, it was a time period, and the time period was the 80s through the mid 80s through mid 90s. And to me, it started with newspaper comic strips. Okay. I don't know if that was a big a thing for you guys, but we always had a newspaper come into the house, and my dad would read the funny pages to me on the Saturdays. And then as I got older, I started reading my own during the week. And I didn't know about comic books per se, and this is how comics came into my house, was through the newspaper strips. So through the 80s, Watterson naturally was a big influence, but for me personally, my favorite was Gary Larson and The Far Side.
Okay.
And part of the appeal for that was, I don't know if he shaped my humor or I just found a home in his humor. But the weird and the absurd and just plain goofball stuff that he draws was just like it just really hit home to me. And the fact that you didn't have to draw like Rembrandt, like his basically glorified stick figures, but it's about communicating the joke that's the important, and it's a melding of the art and the joke was one thing, and in a short burst. And as a kid,
there's a
that really
cartooning
captured.
end to it. There's a sort of
Yes,
cartooning edge to it, Matt, rather than perhaps your classical Neil Adams kind of
right.
physicality as well. I can see that in your work, man, a bit. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
It
Yeah, I
reminds
mean,
me a bit of. I always used to think it was Mad magazine when I saw that as a kid, but
yeah,
it's
I
not.
was
You could see them as similar things.
yeah. So that's a lot of my influence was through the newspaper strips, and I mean, naturally, I saw the other strips too. Like they had more realistic things like Mark Trail and Prince Valiant, but
Okay.
the ones that spoke to me were always the humorous ones.
Mm.
And
But comic strips took a different format in it. Well, not massively different, but we had them in the daily newspapers. Most of them had something. Even the broadsheets would have stuff. Some of them, and then we would get collections at Christmas, which they would all be put together in. But your Sunday, is it Sunday Funnies, isn't it? It used to be almost its own bit of newspaper on its own, wasn't it?
correct, yeah, it was a full color. Like during the week, you would get the weekly page, which was black and white, and you kind of had to dig for it. But on the weekends, it was like this big, full-sized 11 by 17 sheet of paper, and it's like all these pages of comics in full color. And the artists got to have a little more space. Like Waterson was really the one who pushed that format
Yeah.
in the 80s with using the different panel layouts and full splash page panels and stuff. And
I
it
think,
was just
especially like Calvin
awesome.
and Hobbes is one of those, like thinking of Watson.
Yeah.
Calvin and Hobbes is an absolute iconic, legendary book that
Yep.
I think most people in the UK can't mention it in this conversation as Golden Age because we weren't getting it like the Americans were getting it.
Right.
But I think by the time it really, so certainly from my view, when we started getting over here, it was in collections. I never saw it printed in anything else.
Yeah, because I was never really at home much, so I never really saw the daily newspapers. It was always at the boarding house, so we didn't really get a newspaper. So yeah, you're right. When I saw stuff like Peanuts or Garfield,
Yeah.
or later on Calvin and Hobbes, it was always in collections. But the thing is, like, you have stuff that we've never heard of, man. Like, is it Family Circus?
Family Circus, yeah,
That was a massive one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Kathy. I'm trying to think of all the different ones.
There were
Wizard
a
of
couple that
Id.
translated that came over. What's the one about the big dog?
Clifford?
No.
Clifford was a TV show.
No,
Clifford the Big Red Dog.
It was like a bit.
Marmaduke.
Marmaduke.
Marmaduke,
That
Yep.
came over here. Yeah.
Yep. Andy Capp. I'm trying to think of all the different
Yeah,
ones.
Andy Capp's a funny one because it's a bit like Dennis the Menace. We both had our own versions of it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Dennis the Menace was like an anarchist, may as have been in the Sex Pistols for us. But for yours, he was this sort of next door neighbour kid. I only really know it from the film, but
Yeah, it's a bit of a rogue.
yeah, had a catapult and
What was the
Dennis the
American
Menace
Andy
was
Capp
literally
then?
blowing up schools.
He was I was a little before my time. Like that was the ones my dad would read.
Right,
It was
okay.
like
Andy
and,
Capp's got a really interesting history over there because it started off with him beating his wife, believe it or not, and then it ended
Okay.
up with her beating him up. Do you remember that was kind of the way it went?
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Because the Andy Capp in the UK is like kind of like a flat top northern drinker who's kind of
Chain
always
smoking. Yeah,
his
light and
wife's
bitter.
always got in rollers. It's very kind of UK centric. There's a lot of references in there which I don't know if they translate to other countries.
Yeah, I don't know.
But there's some. I mean, all the Gil Kane stuff, the Kirby stuff. The Wally Wood stuff. There's all these
Well,
like
Dick Tracy wasn't Dick Tracy a strip book originally, wasn't it? Was that?
It might have been, yeah.
I think that
Yeah,
was.
I
a
don't know
strip.
enough about. I think it was.
was a
You can buy them in
strip.
those big collections.
Yeah.
X-19, these sort of thing. Secret Agent strips. There's unfortunately most of the collections of them are so expensive you wouldn't believe it. But there's some beautiful stuff out there, man.
Did Dredd used to run like three?
Yeah,
pages,
Dredd
three
did. Yeah,
panels?
Spider-Man did. Obviously, Stan wrote Spider-Man
Yeah.
for a long time along with his brother.
Those hilarious ones where someone's re-edited the speech bubbles for the Spider-Man ones.
Yeah,
They're
Alex
great.
Saviak was the ice on them for years, wasn't he? He does a lot of conventions actually. I think he was at Baltimore. Matt. I don't know if we spoke to him. Alex
No.
Saviak. Yeah,
No, it's
yeah,
not. I don't think so.
yeah.
Man, that's a good one.
That's an interesting one. And you're right, that is the formative one for a lot of us. I think the thing in America is that it was designed so that the parents could go, "Oh, shut up," and give the kids this load of comics, isn't it?
Now it's an iPad, isn't it? That you give your kids.
Yeah. Now it's just heroin. And that's cool.
Yeah. But the Far Side's a great shout. That the Far Side's another just absolute. If you want like some of the best comedy.
Yeah, I highly recommend the omnibus. It's just as big as the Calvin and Hobbes 3-volume one that you guys all have seen.
Yeah,
it is so. I picked it up. It's like you can kill somebody if you dropped it on.
Yeah,
so mad.
Yeah,
and it's so impressive when you're holding that much work in your hands as a physical thing. Like one man made all this.
Yeah,
it's like I don't know, just in disbelief of how good these guys were to come up with jokes every day.
It says a lot that when the Far Side ended. It was news over here. I remember hearing about it at the time that like, oh, this is coming. He's not doing it anymore.
And I admire too that both of those creators were they weren't sellouts. Like they didn't heavily merchandise their stuff.
Yeah.
They were kind of like independent people. Larson believed that like comic book artists should be like anonymous and their work should be speaking for itself.
Oh wow.
They were very private guys. I just love both of those.
Yeah.
Both of those guys.
Good choices.
So, that's
cool. Who's going next?
I think with my one, I don't know whether me and Dan, some of it will echo.
Okay.
I have a feeling.
Go on in. You go. You go next, Vin.
Because when I think about like my personal golden age for comics, it's like those times where it almost feels dreamlike, doesn't it? It just everything's just so great. You've got no worries. The comics are wonderful. You're just enjoying this. Basically, we're thinking about the time when we didn't have to pay taxes or like worry about global warming or any of this stuff. We were just kids, and it was just all about whatever stories we were reading, what we were caught up in at the time. There's sort of two sort of areas for me, and it may seem like a bit obvious, but the one I can immediately think of that was the time when I used to sit around with two of my buddies, and we just go through all the comics that we bought, the American comics that we bought, and we were going through, and I was trying to find the books that I wanted to collect. My mates were collecting. It was almost like they picked they had already grabbed all of the titles that they loved.
Yeah,
and I wanted to find mine, and it was just and it is that. The image boom, that 90s boom, like that was the lightning. I mean, a lot of people look back on it now, and you can look back at the quality of the books in whatever light. But at the time, like I was enjoying like the stuff that wasn't part of Image as well, because I didn't really know that stuff. I was still enjoying like the Marvel books. Yes, if I pick them up in a comic mart now, they're probably not that great. But we're not talking about it now. We're talking about like when I was reading it at the time, and it was that sort of. I mean, certainly there was stuff you liked and you didn't like, but that was when there was just comics everywhere. Like, and also that was at the time where I discovered Malibu. Late in the day, I discovered things like Malibu,
Dinosaurs Fire.
Yeah, all of these little
X-Mutants.
These little indie publishers.
X-Mutants,
yeah. The Wizard Times. When Valiant. In the days of like Deathmate, the Deathmate books and that, when Solar, Man of the Atom and stuff. I never read Valiant then. Do you know what I mean? I caught up with Valiant a lot later, but I knew about them. Do you know what I mean? There was lots of things happening, and it felt like an exciting time. And yes, the bottom fell out of it. You can talk about all of all the covers and whatever, and I think when comics sort of hooked into my veins in that sort of American comics hooked into my veins. It was Jim Lee, man. Completely Jim Lee just got me, and I think it was around the Uncanny X-Men. It hooked because
when it flipped over to X-Men like.
It was before. It was before then. It was just before then, and I know because it was an issue that I reread so much that the cover pretty much fell off because, and I've spoken about it before, when you can buy an issue and you couldn't find the other ones. It was when Rogue came back from the dead, and there was Savage Land and Magneto, all of that stuff, and just opening that was just a bomb dropping on my brain, like, what? Just everything just looked fantastic.
Cool as fuck.
That iconic Magneto pose at the end of that fucking issue that's a splash page, which is pretty much almost the Magneto pose, isn't it, of all time for a lot of people. And from then on, I was like, this dude is just next level. You know, so I was in the perfect place for when X-Men. You know, I was. Yeah. And I think it was that tidal wave that I was caught up in, and I think there's a reason why that book and that era sold as much as it did, because there was an.
At the time, it was hot shit, man. Yeah.
Yep. And you know, I think sometimes when we're the grumpy old grey-haired men going, well, comics in those days, you know, they scrimped on this or the art of the writing or whatever. Sometimes we need to put that aside and just think, well, how did we feel when this was there? And it was genuinely exciting. When I saw, like, I mean, Omega Red is a villain for me that totally doesn't get the love he deserves from Marvel ever since he first got created. Because I remember when that character turned up in the comics, and it was the Jim Lee stuff, and it was the Wolverine and Sabretooth, sort of, you know, all of that, and it was like an unstoppable character. I was like, this is massive for the entire sort of universe. It's interesting 20, 30 years down the line how that character's just, I don't know, a couple of panels in a book these days. But
no, he was in X-Force for a while recently. They used him quite well in X-Force.
Do they?
Okay.
Yeah, I quite liked him in that.
Is he a villain?
No, he's a sort of villain made to be an X-Force kind of thing.
I'm not interested in that.
Most of them, they kind of swapped them now, haven't they? There's not that many villains.
Yeah.
So dismissive. Yeah.
You might know this one. There was a Jim Lee X-Men where it's a gatefold and you fold it out and it was all the X-Men in the blue and yellow, and they had a white background, and it was fucking us. Like, that cover was like, oh my god, this is the fucking
amazing. What is that? The one where the word X-Men was written in stone?
No. It was.
Right.
It was uncanny. It was Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people may be like, yeah, well, the mid-90s. That I think there's a reason we're getting a new X-Men animated series, which is X-Men '97, because
I quite like that.
Apparently, it's quite good. I've heard it's really good. But it's also, at the time, the X-Men were just. You know, and because of course I missed out on all the Dark Phoenix. I missed out on all those things that are now the classics that I've caught up on and I've read and I've seen everyone. But it was when, I think sometimes a golden age is when something connects you to a property. I don't like using the word, but, you know, a character, a story. And I think that was the time where I was like, yeah, X-Men will always be my team. Even if I don't read it now.
I think the wider sort of comics, you know, criticism world, and also the editors and the companies now, they don't give us credit to the connection a reader makes at a certain age with the comic page. Yeah. And I think there is that there's all these theories written about, you know, that 11 to 14 period where you become ultra connected, ultra focused in loving something. And it's certainly the case for me.
Yeah,
that was the period where it's stuff I go back to now. Like we talked about June last week. I was that age.
Yeah,
and it really fucking blew me away. You know.
Here's a sort of a sort of question in terms of these comics that are being made. The writing and the way those stories were crafted, and, you know, probably beforehand, feel very different from a lot of the stuff you're seeing now. Is that because the writers, as well as trying to please themselves creatively, they were writing for an audience rather than themselves? Because there's two very different things, I think.
Yeah, in relation to selling comics as well, I think.
Yeah. Because certainly you can write, you want to write the thing that you want to write. We all want to do the stuff that's creatively fulfilling for us. But also you're writing a book that's for a certain, like, I think some of the new stuff, and this I'm including all publishers across the board here. Some of this stuff is unreadable by a younger audience, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a puzzle to read. It shouldn't be a.
To me, a good writer would write something. Sorry to interrupt. A good writer would write something for everyone to read. And unfortunately, what we've got now is we've got writers who are writing for their idealized audience.
Yeah.
You know,
not writing for the audience, writing for their idealized audience.
Yeah, writing for the people of their same, you know, who they've heard on Twitter, wherever it's going to be, over the same sort of thoughts. Yeah, not the fact that everyone loves Punisher, just what they think they should do with Punisher now. Yeah,
it's not
Punisher mentioned.
I'm with you, Vince, on the X-Men. Like, that was my introduction to the X-Men, even though I was a little bit older than you. And to me, that will be my version of the X-Men. But it was because it brought it to pop culture. Like there weren't comic book stores until around that time for me in this area.
Yeah.
So going to a comic book store for the first time, and then X-Men run being on the shelves, and I was able to read it and jump in and understand it. Being a comic book fan of the X-Men today, I was trying to get back into the title. I don't know when it was, a few years ago. I had no freaking clue what was going on or what was happening in the story. But I had nothing about the X-Men that I knew in the early 90s, and I jumped right in and enjoyed it, was buying everything, all the crossovers. I was a sucker.
Exactly.
That's a problem. That's a problem across though, at the moment.
Yeah.
I'd missed a couple of issues of a single series recently and tried to jump back in without reading the last two, and I was lost.
Yeah,
and I've been reading that comic for fucking 50 years.
Yeah, if you think about the time when I'm saying I jumped into it around that 287 or whatever number it was of Uncanny X-Men that led into the Uncanny and X-Men tour de force. The amount of story, character, branches, trees, relationships and stuff that had gone on that I wasn't privy to, I should have been lost when that series started, and I knew exactly where I was.
This leads very much into my choice. Would you mind if I
go for it?
Did mine, because it's massively into what you're saying there, and I don't sort of repeat it, but my first one is superhero teams of the 70s and 80s. And one of the reasons I wrote down, so you got X-Men, Avengers, New Teen Titans, Legion, Omega Men, Defenders, Invaders, Champions, Freedom Fighters, All-Star Squadron, Justice America, Justice League America. And the one thing all of them had in common is there was one series. So you didn't have to read even like bloody the Justice League, even all of those that I mentioned there. You'd have to read interoperate, series all over the scan to try and get into what was happening. But the thing is, I went from reading, I don't know, whatever it was, the Hulk, I think this is amazing, like about the Hulk, and then someone said, have you seen the Avengers? And I'm like, there's like 8 of them, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
So but I wouldn't need to read Hawkeye's series or Captain America's series, even though he had one, or Thor's series, to work out what was going on in it. And to that, this falls into the other part of what I'm talking about, is this theory that there is around American television as well, and I think it applies to American comics, is the family model.
Yeah.
So they designed certain, like the X-Men, Cyclops was the older brother, Professor Xavier was the dad, Hank McCoy was like the crazy cousin, there's all this sort of thing. They create a family environment that drops the reader in. He looks around himself and he thinks he's at home. And I think you can only do that when you've got that tight story that you can personally follow. A kid can't do that now with the X-Men because you have to read 14 issues a month, and you kids can't afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at something like any of the events.
Yeah. What I was thinking of when you were saying that, Tony, to perfectly sort of encapsulate it as well, you mentioned Teen Titans, that was one of my DC like faves, and I just read it in reprints and stuff. I didn't I didn't follow the series. I think a brilliant way to sort of crystallize that is when I got the omnibus of the classic Teen Titans, like when they first arrived. Was it George Perez and who was it?
New Teen Titans. New
Teen Titans.
Marv Wolfman.
Wolfman and George Perez, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You can enjoy that any day of the week, any decade, any year.
Now
any whatever.
You can enjoy it. Yeah.
And yes, things are going on. You're thinking, hey, hold on, Robin's stepping away from Batman, and they cover that, and you're off to where you are.
Yep.
You know exactly where you are, and you can just follow that. And it doesn't have any, what's going to happen here? Well, you've got to read this other book.
That's the thing, you become attached to characters. And if that character suddenly changes because something happened in fucking some series, as a reader, especially as a kid, you're like, oh, I've missed that. Well, I'm not really in touch with that character anymore. People don't realise that. You have an affinity, an affection even, for a character that you want to be excited. Even like as a fucking 12-year-old, I'm thinking, oh, I hope that Robin and Starfire stay together. Who's this bloke from space? I hope he doesn't get between them. But if that happened in another issue of something else you weren't reading, you come back and you go, oh, that's a piece of me that's missing now. It's almost that bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think back then you could, and it applies to all titles really, but it's the team titles that I really enjoyed. Is you could buy you could buy Defenders, you could buy Invaders, and that's all you needed to know, man.
Yeah. And this is also saying, like, some people may sort of say, oh yeah, but they're just the same old characters and stuff. They're not. Like, for instance, like Starfire was in Teen Titans, for instance. She was a new And was
Yeah.
Raven fairly new? At
Yeah,
that
Raven
point?
was new as well,
Exactly.
and Cyborg.
So
yeah.
it's like
yeah.
they're trying new characters at that point. Do you know what I mean? So if you've got an argument about, it's just the same old characters that you know and love, it's like, no. In that time, they were still trying new things, and you can do it and be successful and get readers latched
And as a
onto
kid, you're
the-
thinking, he's my character now. I've been with him from the start. You know, it's like a band's first album.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the first episode of a comedy series. There's a lot
Yeah.
of things. Right, he's mine now. He's a Cyborg. Love that character. He's mine now. You know, it's like that, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
That's one of mine, man. I think team books are great. As a kid, I used to think team books are great because you got loads of characters for the price of like where you'd normally get two characters, possibly. You know,
the problem
fighting
that
each other.
team books have now, I think. Well, I mean, one of the problems that I see. I know there's a lot of problems that people will probably be shouting at their iPods or whatever they're doing. But now it seems like team books are just a list of cast that they will cull at some point. Do you know what I mean? They'll be like, who's going to die in this issue? I don't want that all the time.
Well, like Suicide Squad, you know it's going to get rebooted in 12 issues. They'll have a different team.
One of the
Nobody
reasons
cares.
that X-Force doesn't mean anything, no matter how well these books are written and done, same with the Thunderbolts, one of the reasons I don't care about it is because it's just a changing lineup.
Yeah, when you had that Madrox, Wolfsbane, you know, Strong Guy, all that was a brilliant series. That was like 50 solid issues just for those characters. Yeah, I reread that recently. It's so readable. If you got the Marvel app, go and read it. It's really
was that
good.
X Factor?
Yeah, sorry, X Factor.
yeah.
Sorry,
X
X Factor.
Factor's
Yeah,
great,
sorry. Yeah.
X Factor seems like a team that like Marvel just don't care about. You know, that's a name that they don't care about anymore.
Yeah. Good.
Oh, good. What have you got?
We haven't done the whole of one yet, so we need to speed up.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck me. Yeah, it's like
yeah.
cracking on. My one, it's an event thing, and that's the death of Superman.
All right.
Yeah.
Fuck me. This was like, obviously I was into comics and stuff, and it made the jump into kind of reality, as it were, because this was on the news. I don't know how, it was probably covered more in America, Matt, for you guys.
Yeah, it was huge. Like I was saying with the X-Men, it was around the same time period.
Yeah.
And comic book stores were cropping up that weren't there before, and it just brought it to everybody's attention. Like it became pop culture rather than like a nerd side hobby. You know, more people knew about it. It was in the news. So it was everywhere.
I mean, we was actually, I remember when this kind of stories, this is happening to Superman, and we was all flying down, well, I say flying, it's a couple of mile cycle from where we used to go to school to the comic shop to get like the black edition with the armband that was bagged.
The white bag was that
the white bag one. Yeah. It was nuts. But like there were kids in school talking about how Superman would die. And it was like, there's only 2 or 3 of us I know who are into comics and we talk about comics that would generally talk about this. And then like we got all the boys in the class kind of pitching in on it. It was a strange time. And then obviously you had the reign of the Supermen, and I don't know about you guys. I was so invested in that.
Yeah.
I was like, who's he going to be out of these 4? One of them it couldn't obviously be because it said, I'm not actually Superman. I'm just some guy in a suit, which maybe was a bit of a misstep. But obviously, like,
I don't know about you, Dan, but like at that age, I didn't know that comic book characters come back. So like I thought this was for good.
Yeah,
Superman's dead.
Yeah, Superman's dead. I was like, we can. He's like an institution. This is like a kind of
even if you didn't realize that he's going to come back, there's a big thing about how they're going to resolve this. Fucking hell. You know, that was a good time for me. I really like listening to the audio version of it as well. I don't know why. I just really like that audio thing they did. Really good.
You said, I think we've definitely talked about this before, but like, I can remember it being like, fucking hell, this is a real big deal. And then they had the 4 new Supermen come back, and they had like die cut covers they had like a solid like green or blue or red, and then their Superman symbol in the middle of the issue of like the first issue of the kid Superman. There was the cyborg Superman. You had Steel and the other one, which was the Eradicator.
Yeah,
eventually, but I can't remember what they called him. But yeah, man, that was halcyon days. I got really fond memories of that.
Yeah, big changes that stayed for a long time. Came out of that as well. Coast City, all this sort of thing as well. You know,
Cyborg Superman was a great villain. I'm not sure what else they did with him.
Yeah, he's been backwards and forwards a bit.
So Hank Henshaw, he was. They kind of pulled a bit of a fast one because they had the story going through Superman, and then it was like, in Green Lantern 76, the story continues there, and it absolutely fucked everyone up because
That's right. They hadn't ordered.
Yeah, they were ordering all the Superman because the Superman was like fire. But when this Green Lantern was a sleeper, I presume most stores wouldn't have got more than like 3 or 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen copies. And because it tied in, they just blew out. Which was
mind you, there was the piece de resistance of that period, which was the Steel movie with Shaq.
Yeah.
That was the crowning achievement.
Never seen that.
I've tried to watch it.
Didn't that spiral off into like Green Lantern going nuts because they blow up Coast City?
Yeah, that's what sends him mad.
And
he eventually becomes the Spectre, all that sort of thing as well, doesn't he? Yeah,
and that's all off. That's weird because like off that crossover, that was a big event. And nowadays, do they do kind of a crossover event which impacts a character from another title that much? So I mean, because that's a massive change. Like you got a whole city wiped out, and the character spins off from there, and that affects them going forward.
I have to think about that one.
Yeah, something to have a think about.
Yeah, good.
Secret Wars and Spider-Man, the black symbiote suit. That's old news now. The symbiote, they don't really use that anymore.
No, they haven't used that at all, have they?
I can't even remember his name.
That's an opportunity missed.
Yeah. Right, number 2.
Back to me.
Back to you, Matt.
All right, so this is sort of the same time period, but for me, it's more of a run, and that is G.I. Joe, the Larry Hama initial 155 Marvel run.
Yeah.
Like I was just on the cusp of being able to play with the toys as a kid, and reading those file cards that Larry Hama wrote, it just brought such depth to the characters, and I created this world, and I didn't even know about the comics until I was playing with a buddy of mine. And he's like, these have comics, right? I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And we didn't have a comic book store. So I remember going to a 7-Eleven and picking up issue number 10 off the spinner rack and being confused because like the month dates never match up what the real month is because of the weird comic thing. But being in love with it and just like trying to get those books off the spinner rack. And then finally a comic book store opened up and I could get all the back issues and just the hunt of collecting the first 9 and plus the random ones that I was missing. And
mate, that finding your first comic shop for me it was a comic mart, but you're like fucking hell, what it's like all of my Christmases at once.
Because at that point you're kind of being drip fed 1 or 2 issues you can pick up here and there, but then like you're going to the
frustrating
stores, it's like.
And I was lucky enough to have a good comic book store where the owner really cared. He's the guy that I told you guys on the Slack got me Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 through 4, like first prints.
Nice.
Right, wow. Yeah.
And since I was like a broke kid, he let me pay him off in like installment plans and stuff. So he was super cool, and it was a great way to get into comics because he was a really caring owner. I had a great investment. But specifically, issue 31 of G.I. Joe was my favorite. I know you have like the silent issue 21, and then you've got the ninja stuff with 26 and 27 with the Rashikage clan, and that cool Mike Zeck cover where Storm Shadow's kicking Snake Eyes off the train, the elevated train. Like those 2 episodes were really good. But 31 for me was Snake Eyes is getting airdropped into his cabin in the Sierra Mountains, and Destro and Firefly are sent there. They get word, then they're going to go kill him. And there's like this epic fight in the woods at the cabin. And they got him pinned down, and they throw a grenade in, and Snake Eyes kicks it out. And at the very end, Firefly drops this satchel of explosives down into the cabin and blows it to hell. And you just got Timber, the wolf, standing there in front of the flames, and like thinks Snake Eyes is dead. Like it was just such action-packed, like an '80s action film, but in comic form. And just like that was the best issue for me. And then like I was hooked after 31. It was just like so good. And
nice, man.
Lifelong fan ever since. I have every issue.
I'm jealous of that, man. Because fucking I obviously started on Action Force and went over to G.I. Joe when I realized the source material, and it's fucking gold, man. Reading it again from the start, it's just
so much better than the cartoons. Like as a kid, like I grew up with like Speed Racer, where you have like a high death toll of like guys just blowing up, and I'm like, why can't these guys get shot in this cartoon? And I went to the comics. I'm like, yes, this is what I'm looking for. 80s.
They had, it wasn't lasers, it was like machine guns, grenades, everything. And
nobody dies.
I mean, I've been seeing at the toy companies, they didn't really have too much oversight of what Larry Hama was writing on the back of those cards, because like I think Zartan, they've changed it. He used to be like he's a schizophrenic and like suffers PTSD and all this stuff. And it's like, well, this is really heavy. Like, like is it? Because like obviously Hama's I think he's a Vietnam vet, isn't he? So like,
right.
Yep.
he's got chops and like.
But in a weird kind of way, like when you're a kid and you're reading things like that, you're introduced to this sort of dark subject matter, but not in a way that's sort of like, it's more like, because you read it and you think, oh, in a naive way, oh, that's cool. But then you're like, well, what is it? And then you look it up and think, oh, so in some twisted kind of way, it actually educates, because there was loads of stuff that I was reading in those file cards. It's like, oh, yeah, this person does that, or they fucking... And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. What does it mean?
Yeah, what's Taekwondo?
Yeah. Great stuff.
I still love those Ohotmu pages. You know, if they turn up online, I'll read them. It's the same, isn't it? Oh, where's the origin? How tall is this person? You know, it's almost like that, isn't it? It's weird, but I just really like it. Yeah. That's the OCD in us, though, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah.
Also, I think with the action figures and the file cards, back then, you didn't have as much media. So your imagination had to use the action figures to create
Did a lot of
it.
lifting.
Like, especially with like Star Wars, like you had to wait a couple years for the next movie, so you had to make up the Star Wars world in the meantime with the action figures.
Yeah.
And that was just so
Tell a million
influential.
stories.
Yeah.
I spoke to my brother about this the other day. We was out doing a bit of shopping with me, my brother and my mum. I was only young, and we went into Lorimer's, which is like a toy and stationery store. I don't think they're around anymore, but they had like the G.I. Joe figures and they had Snake Eyes at the front, and I had to beg my mum. And my brother backed me up for once and said, yeah, that's really hard to get hold of that, mum. And she bought it for me. It's brilliant.
When I used to make up stories with the Star Wars figures, Luke and Leia were definitely not brother and sister back then.
No, bit of retconning going in there on the old Empire.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's before Empire came out.
Yeah. But once again, to sort of like run on from what Matt said, I think certainly another golden age for me. It's almost like I'm going back another 5 years from that, or 5 to 10 years from that X-Men moment. And it is when I was getting that fix, which I've said before, which is like the reprints and the British weeklies and stuff, because you know there wasn't any comic shops, there wasn't any major news agents that were selling these American books. They were and most of the time, after the initial sort of Beano books, or I can't really remember reading much of that. My first memories are kind of like reading like adventure books and action books and like stuff like that. So it was like, and I wasn't a 2000 AD person. I wasn't. I knew other people that did, but it was almost like that was a weekly comic for like the older kid, if that made sense. And then when I got into it, it was usually those reprints. There was Battle, and that was obviously Action, which was Battle, Action Force, which was Battle, and then you had the Eagle. You know, I read an awful lot of Eagle, which was then, and also the Wildcat books. Now this is Wildcat, which was a small weekly in the UK. We're not talking Jim Lee's Wildcats. This was a book called Wildcat, which was a short-lived sci-fi series, wasn't it? I think probably a couple of years, wasn't it? Because that
I have to look it up. UK Comics.
Eagle merged.
It's been reprinted. You bought the reprints for it, didn't you?
There's a couple of different because Lona is one of the Wildcat characters, and I've forgotten the other one now. It's behind me somewhere. But there was all of these books that were like, you know, weekly. Eagle seemed to like swallow everything up after a while. It felt like, you know, for instance, like Stormforce became part of Eagle, and Wildcat became part of Eagle. It was always, when I found all these other ones, eventually Eagle came along and just, you know, sort of swallowed it up. Not enough people talk about Eagle. Eagle in the UK was a major thing. And I mean, there was the Eagle Awards, for God's sake.
Yeah.
The British, you know, was it at Bristol every year, Tony? They used to do the Eagle Awards.
Yeah, funny enough, I got given this today by Simon Russell. There you go.
Hey, amazing.
Eagle Picture Library. Yeah.
And obviously, Eagle, most people know it for like Dan Dare and all of those. And certainly, there were strips you liked, there were strips you didn't like, because they're all 6 pages each. And there's ones I've got fond memories of, one that I'm rediscovering now as I go back to these older books, you know, picking them up from Comic Marts or from eBay sellers and stuff. But that was definitely something that really fueled my love of adventure comics, and just, you know, that ongoing sequential storytelling as well. Because, sometimes when you collect them, what is it, 20, 30 pages of comic? But when you're reading it weekly and you're only getting 4 pages a week, it makes it last. It's that you're getting that fix every week. It's
a shame that delivery system doesn't exist anymore, really, apart from 2000 AD. maybe the odd other thing, but it's a shame because it was so entrenched in our lives,
Yeah.
that system, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Of that, see, that's how we used to get stories, Matt. We even in the reprints of Marvel, we would only get these 4 or 5 pages a week. It's bizarre, and sometimes they'd have to draw an extra page because it would be the splash page. So you've got these sort of stuff from Avengers and Hulk and Spider-Man and everything that's pages you guys won't have seen because they had to fill it in to make that extra page at the start of an issue.
It's a
bit of a weird thing.
It was a big deal for me. Here's the Punisher mention, but a genuine Punisher mention this time because Marvel UK did a sort of like because the books, the reprints were slightly bigger than A4, weren't they, guys? I think they were slightly wider.
Yeah.
And that's how you had that's how I got my Action Force / GI Joe comics and Real Ghostbusters and stuff like that. But it was a big thing when the Punisher book came out, which was essentially just reprints of what Marvel are putting out on a monthly basis. But you'd have 2 stories in it. You'd have like 10 pages of a Punisher comic, and then the back would be the Nam. So it would be like 10 pages. And just think about that combination. What a fucking combination to have. As a kid, just on a weekly basis, and I remember because this is always a big deal, especially in the 80s, the first issue came with a poster.
Yeah.
That was a big deal back in the day when posters were a big deal. But this was one that I know Tony and Dan, they know more than me. It was that Circle of Blood. That was how they started this series.
Man, that's what a fucking start with Mike's X art on that first issue is amazing.
And immediately you just think this is fucking brilliant. It felt like grown-up comics for kids. Do you know what I mean? And it was just so those sort of. It's a publishing model that can't exist now. That won't exist. I know there's people, certainly independent creators, and there's certain publishers and stuff who are recreating the similar sort of stuff. They're doing anthologies and they're trying the same sort of things. And it's wonderful seeing like these little anthology stories, but you can't.
But not weekly. There's not that newsagent delivery.
You can't replicate what that was ever again, which is why just at that moment in time, it was just and that sort of formed what I was going to. It's almost like it's the drugs that get you hooked onto the harder stuff later, isn't it?
The gateway drugs.
Yeah. What about you, Tony?
Me. So my second one can be summed up in one word: Kirby. I was reading Kirby before I knew who he was. A lot of the times when I think of Thor, for example, or Captain America, or Black Panther, or Hercules, there's all these characters, and that's not even including the back characters or the villains or anything. Who my head immediately goes to Kirby. Right. So he's an artist who I read in the black and white reprints as soon as I started reading, possibly before I could fully read everything. And then I began to realize who he was and for what he was. And then that took me to Fourth World, his arrival at DC, Mr. Miracle, OMAC, Kamandi. And then it took me back to Marvel with him, with the Eternals and his Black Panther and back on Capp. And then it took me to all of the spin-off, Destroy a Duck and all these sort of titles. And then back to Superpowers at DC. And it's been a constant from the very moment I saw him as a kid before I could kind of read properly through to now when I'm excited when I get an issue of Kirby Collector through. So it's been an absolute constant. When I started drawing, it was copying pages from Kirby comics. I even do that thing with lighting where he seems to sort of light both sides of the face at once. And there's a line down the middle of it. And, his stuff in many ways shouldn't work, but does work the best for me. There's no one who, we love Larson, but Larson is basically a Kirby clone.
Yeah.
Is the bombastic brutality, the strength, the power, everything in his images, fucking brilliant for me. It's just, I've been, what am I now? I'm 57 almost. It's been since I was 5. I've been reading Kirby, and it's just been there forever. And it is always imprinted in me, So him. So Kirby's an easy answer to say, but yeah, definitely Kirby.
Nice. Dan?
Jumping from one thing to another. Someone brought in to school an issue of Groo the Wanderer. And
I was at the comic market with Nando today, and he picked up a load of issues of Groo.
That's fucking great. It's such a good comic. But I jumped from there to one of my other big loves, and that was to Usagi.
Okay.
And I didn't realize Stan Sakai did the lettering in
Groo. Yeah.
In Groo.
That's where they're big friends, aren't they?
Yeah. And I because I must have early teens, I didn't know anything about pretty much Japanese culture and samurai. So it was kind of like an education reading Usagi because there was so much concepts and stuff about the culture that I was just completely.
My introduction to Japanese culture was stuff like Usagi, but also when Wolverine went to Japan.
Yeah.
Or when we got Ronin from or the the ninjas that appeared in Daredevil. That's when I started reading. Oh, this is really cool.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, I know what a Ronin is now, and
exactly
stuff like that. But stuff about
all because of this comic about a rabbit. Yeah.
There was stuff in it that was being referenced that I didn't realize it was referencing other stuff. Like he has the lone goat and kid, and the blind swords pig, and they're obviously off of who's the blind swordsman?
Zatoichi.
Yes, Zatoichi, and then you had the Lone Wolf and Cub. And
it's amazing when you see a reference like that in something.
Yeah.
It's like listening to a cover song, and the first time you ever hear it is the cover song. And then a few years later you think, okay, now someone else did this before.
Yeah.
It's like when I was a massive fan of Mike Flowers' Pop, and then I realised it was an Oasis song.
So my
bit of a niche English
reference
Matt. I'll send it to you later.
My friend was like into horror films and stuff, and I remember being put on a DVD, VHS in the day, and it played the trailers beforehand, and it had an advert for Shogun Assassin, and I was like, "That's fucking Lone Goat and Kid from Usagi Yojimbo." And like, hold on, that must have been referencing that. And then I had to go and hunt down that film, and I was like, oh shit, there's a whole series of films on this. I bought this with Vince, so I want to ask him, has he watched it yet?
I haven't watched it yet.
You wanker.
Sorry.
Mate, it's dynamite.
I know. It's
so
on
good.
there. Yeah. Shame on me.
So that whole little period is just,
nice.
I'm sure we've talked about many of our ones before.
We have talked about it sort of infinitum, but I think it's to look at it like this, like a golden age is really like sort of crafting you as a reader, as what you enjoy, what you like, and I think it helps sometimes to go back and re-admire the things. Comics is a nostalgic medium, is it not?
Massively. And that's why I tried to sort of group mine. So I've got a movement, a style, and an artist. I thought I'm going to go for 3 different like that sort of thing. Because I know we can all talk about, I love Slane, or or I could have just talked about Master of Kung Fu for 4 hours or something, but I wanted to. I think we've all done it where we've approached it from a different way.
Yeah, my third one's an artist. So.
Oh, okay, all right. So we go back to Matt then. Matt, for you.
Back to me. Okay, yeah. So I was taking the approach of how comics shaped me, and so it was like the introduction, and then what brought me into comic stores, and then the third one ties in sort of to the same time period as Vince with the Jim Lee X-Men, and that for me was Todd McFarlane and Spider-Man.
Okay.
I loved the character as a kid, but all I knew him from was the 60s animated show.
Yeah.
And there was a show in here called Electric Company where Spider-Man would come in and do like a little guest appearance. It was like an educational kids TV show, and I had
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. And then I had a poster on my wall, but it really wasn't until I got into a comic book store that I realized there's all of these comics, hundreds of issues of Amazing Spider-Man. So I was working on those back issues, loving the character, and then Todd McFarlane burst into the scene with how he drew Spider-Man. It's such dynamic with the webbing and the almost caricaturish way that he characters, and it was exciting to be there on the ground floor of a number one title. I was like, Spider-Man #1. I wasn't there for the beginning of Amazing Spider-Man, but it's cool to be on the ground floor of a new movement, and it was just so awesome. So for me, it was Todd McFarlane, and I still love his work, and I still love Spawn, even though it's not that good.
I remember when we were doing that Spawn read through. I wasn't involved in it. And I think I read a recent one, and I went, "Oh, Matt, I hope you don't mind, but I've jumped forward and read this recent one." And you went, "I'm very proud of you, Tony."
It was such a slog.
Yeah, I don't know how it's made it 300 and some issues where he's on now, but I still love the man, and the artwork I still love. And I know it's trashy writing, but
he was lovely to me. Very nice to me when I met him.
The image is everything, kind of thing. It's like That's
one of the reasons to listen to the Rob Liefeld podcast, is he does a great impression of him.
I heard that. Yeah, he's very good.
Amazing.
I'll
Amazing.
keep it short on that one.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. And I
Vincenzo?
think I'll keep it short on my one, purely because I think of in terms of our golden age, it's almost like one of those artists that, for me, like just hooked into my brain, and then I just really wanted to draw like them. Never could, but also hunted down issues that they were part of, and an artist that I felt like was mine at a time when you had all of these other big names, and I just thought, well, and that is the now past Jason Pearson, who was it was a massive part of my comic book reading and creating.
Formation, yeah.
If I look back, when you look back on sketchbooks you did when you were 16 to early mid-20s or whatever, we may laugh at the style, but you will see the influences there. You properly see the influences, and the chunky boots, the sort of rigid sort of character design. I always thought that why he wasn't bigger than he was, and I didn't know too much about him anyway. It was more like just purely the artwork. And when Body Bags, for instance, came along, Body Bags is one of the first 4 issues by Dark Horse is on my sort of Mount Rushmore of comics in a lot of ways. I read and reread that. I managed to get issues, what was it, 2, 3, and 4, and one of my first ever experiences of a convention. This was I must have been 17 or something like that. It was just a small one in Bristol. I have the rest of the event cloudy memories. It was just sort of walking around, and I was in more of a shopping mode than meeting creators and stuff like that. It was more sort of wow, these are rooms filled with comics. But I was still the introvert, so I didn't want to talk to anyone. Finding some long boxes and going through those long boxes and seeing issue 1 of Body Bags in a bag, and it was £10. And at that point, it's that's the most I've ever paid for a comic, but I'm buying it. I'm immediately buying it.
Still is.
It still is. £2.50 is the most I'll pay for a comic these days. But it was one of those. That moment was for me one of those crystallized the missing issue of a run, which I hope, and it was only a 4-issue run, so it's not a massive one, but I know there's probably a lot of people out there who had long runs that have found in a long box somewhere that one issue that they needed to complete their run. It's a dreamlike sequence, isn't it, when that happens? You're like, here it is, no one else wants it. What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on here?
And certainly, I bought it, I read it, kept it, and then when the trade came out, and I had his Savage Dragon miniseries. This was at a time when no one else did Savage Dragon miniseries. Eric Larson did that character all the time, and it has to say something about an artist that Jason Pearson was given the keys to write and draw a 3-issue Savage Dragon miniseries.
Yeah, because he was a character very endeared to, because he'd been drawing him since he was little, hadn't he? So to hand it over to someone, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And that Savage Dragon Blood and Guts, which is a fucking brilliant series. It's brutal, gory, but just really cool, kinetic. And that was another, I just loved his artwork. And it's a shame we're not going to get more of it. It was very sad. But yeah, another founding pillar of the sort of art I like seeing in comics. So that's mine.
Cool.
Tony.
My next one, or my final one, is a period of comics, an era. So I'm a bit older than everyone here, so I'd grown up on the Marvel black and white reprints that then became Marvel UK. So I'd gone meat and potatoes comics. So sometimes, let's face it, as much as I love these comics, the only difference between these characters was their powers and their costumes. Otherwise, they were kind of the same person often, weren't they? Mm-hmm. So I was, I'd pick them out, especially stuff like Legion or Avengers or stuff like that by their costumes, and I was obsessed, addicted, obsessed, same as I now. And then the Bronze Age came along, and I realised what else there could be done in comics. And I think that twisted something in my brain that has influenced my reading choices, my movie choices, and now my comic choices. And it's stuff like Killraven, stuff like the Micronauts, Swamp Thing and Man Thing, even the Eternals and the Fourth World stuff, Defenders, Howard the Duck especially, Amiga the Unknown, just fucking weirdness. You know what I mean? Adam Warlock, Tomb of Dracula. this even Master of Kung Fu, it was just so different from what was going on. And I think that the influx of people like McGregor, Mensch, Mantlo, Gerber, Denny O'Neill, Jim Starlin, Paul Galassi, Len Wein, Frank Bruner, Kaluta, Miller, Simonson, Barry Smith, all these people, they suddenly came in as this big wave of people who were not sort of smoking a pipe in the office and going to work in a tie. A lot of the, I mean, if you read the Marvel the Untold Story, Starlin was off his nut wandering the streets of New York on acid. You know, these people were they were like these counterculture guys who I'm like, now that's and people have taken that onwards, you know, exploring the realms of reality and, you know, pushing their own sort of mental abilities and putting it on a page, having the bravery to put it on a page. You know, we've got stuff like interracial kisses going on in Killraven. You know, we've got Black Panther leading, you know, fighting the Ku Klux Klan in Jungle Action with Don McGregor. And, you know, these people are to be massively admired, but not only were they doing what would now probably be called a right-on thing, but they were doing it so well, so originally, so creatively, so just like using that force of creativity in their comics that we hadn't seen before. And, you know, people like P. Craig Russell and stuff like that, what the dance they played on the page. And I think that still plays on my mind when I write stuff now. And I choose stuff to read as well. You know, so there's that little firm of people. There you go. Can I just give a shout out to Billy Graham? He didn't get enough love. There you go, that's my other favourite ice.
Nice.
There you go. So there's a whole. I would say it's the Bronze Age, but it's also a certain area of the Bronze Age because Kurt Swan was in the Bronze Age, but he wasn't Kaluta. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Nice.
That's mine.
Okay.
Mine's going to shout out to a strip I saw in. It was in the back of Action Force, but I later came to realise it's in. It was first printed in G.I. Joe Yearbook 2, which I managed to get a copy of at the London Comic Mart, and I've sent you guys a link to the artist edition of it, which is going for $350 on eBay, which I don't have the money for. But Michael Golden's art on this, at the time, I was absolutely fucking blown away because, like Matt, I was playing with the G.I. Joe toys. So when I saw this comic and I was like, here's all the vehicles done in precise detail, but they're kind of cartoony and bending, and there's so much energy in these pages. I was just absolutely amazed. It was kind of rough because as an artist, he had set such a high bar that afterwards, that was the one that was being matched up to by everyone that followed him.
Same in Micronauts, man. He did exactly the same thing in that.
Yeah.
It was never as good.
No, it couldn't. It couldn't be as good if he's not doing it because he's fucking smashing it. And then when you go and see the stuff afterwards, it's like, oh, okay, it's not as good as that, which is a shame. But if you get a chance, G.I. Joe and you too, or just look up G.I. Joe, Arth Adams, October Guard, G.I. Joe, and it'll pop up. And they're fantastic pages.
And there's an artist edition of that, is there?
Yeah. So the one I've sent a link in the chat.
Yeah, we'll get it now.
Take a look at it.
Yeah, it's fucking amazing.
It's going on eBay for $150.
Bloody hell. Is there not like an artisan edition of it? Because they bring out these smaller versions of it, don't they?
That is an artist edition portfolio. I imagine there might be other stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's a portfolio thing. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan would have found it anyway, but that moment at the Comic Mart when I came across that issue for him is one of my proudest moments
Oh,
of my
mate,
life.
yeah, it was great because we've got
Is this
such a
the one
lack
you
of
want?
it. Yeah. There's such a lack of those comics, G.I. Joe comics in the UK, isn't there? Because they're not.
Yeah.
So when Vince found the exact fucking one I was looking for, I was like, great. Great.
Yeah.
It's fucking great.
I think there's a reason for that, you know. I think when you look at a lot of British war comics, maybe you don't realise this, Matt, but war and football were our superheroes over here. So we don't really have a tradition of superhero. We have a few here and there, but mostly it was war comics or football. You know, the one where they kick it with their foot, not where they carry it with their hands. So there's a difference there. But we've all seen Ted Lasso. But which most of them were anti-war.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, the better ones had an element of this is terrible. You know, stuff like Charlie's War and stuff like that, you know.
The best war stories are anti-war.
I think so. Yeah, or showing the truth of it, aren't they? You know.
Yeah.
So something like G.I. Joe didn't fit the dynamic for some reason, in that it's glorifying battles in a way, is it? I don't know, Dan. You know better than me. I don't know.
Yeah, there's loss and pain in it. I mean, that one's more kind of comedic take, but like people get injured and people are killed, and that's it.
The comic's a lot more nuanced than what we, the kids, were experiencing with the toys, with the action figures and the cartoon and stuff. So it was very much kids wanting to play Army. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was the distillation of that in bright colours. Very Jerry Bruckheimer, you would call it these days. But it was all lasers and stuff. And then because you know that as a kid, you read the comics, and all of a sudden it's whoa. I mean, it can be like this is real. These are.
Oh, I didn't realise that. That's good. So it wasn't quite G.I. Joe in a concentration camp or Charlie's War with his colleagues dying. No. But it still had a realism to it.
But I think because G.I. Joe had if you imagine the cover, the bonnet of the car was "Glorious War, isn't it lovely?" and stuff. It hides the fact that Larry Hama underneath is writing genuine war stories that happen to have ninjas and all these other people in it.
So he wrote the Nam, didn't he? Hama.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nam's amazing. It was interesting what Garth was saying about the Nam, wasn't he? He said he enjoyed it for the first, was it 12, 14 issues or something, and then he said, then it kind of lost its way a bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it had to tie itself into.
Isn't that when the Punisher appears or someone appears? Isn't it?
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I must ask Pat. I'm seeing Pat in a couple of weeks. I must ask him about the Nam. See what he thinks.
So, do you reckon he saw it?
I don't know. I have to ask him. It's a shame there's not like a nice reprint I could take. Is there? I'm not sure. Is there?
Yeah, I've only ever read it on digital.
They did trades of it, didn't they? Because I don't know if they're still available now. But,
that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah,
because that's how I read it years ago on a Comixology sale. I think I spoke about it on this show years ago on a Comixology sale. I was like, right, here's.
They did a big sale on the Nam.
Yeah. So
I might read it. I can show it. I'm on the app. You can borrow my laptop or something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But
And they were our golden ages.
Yeah.
There you go.
Do you know what I love about it? Like Golden Age, as it says, it's a way of looking back at a time that is just really, even if it's imaginary, is a glorious time. And I think I would say to all of our listeners now, no matter where you be in your comics reading or comics creating, just take a moment, because I have thoroughly enjoyed this chat. That is just, especially now, let's look back at some stuff that brought us real joy when, the stresses of the world weren't there and we were just reading comics and enjoying
comics.
The
thing, man, isn't it? We could take a breath. We didn't have to worry about going, I've got to get to bed now because I've got to be up at 4 a.m. It's not like we didn't care as fucking kids. We didn't give two shits.
Didn't even consider it.
We're completely involved in what we were reading, and we'd reread it and reread it and reread it. Yeah.
You didn't have to worry about things being spoiled or things like that, because usually you lived in a little bubble, didn't you? You were just reading comics and
didn't have the fucking internet.
Or just the internet. Tony's got his own personal internet.
Maybe. I have.
Yeah. But we hope you've enjoyed this chat, and as always, keep the conversation going. And be it on the social media or on the Awesome Comics Podcast Slack community. If you want to join in the chat, get in touch with us and be part of it. There's a podcast discussion channel there where you can keep the chat going. Let us know the golden age.
Yeah, let's hear your top three.
Just talk about the comics that you loved. It doesn't, and do you know what? It doesn't matter what anyone else thought of them. If you love them, that's all that fucking matters. You know.
Yeah.
There's loads of books that some people say, well, I was reading this and I was like, I didn't touch them with a fucking barge pole. But if you like them, fair enough.
Yeah. If you wanted to read the Get Along Gang from Marvel, that's totally up to you.
What the hell's that?
Do you remember that comic?
I don't.
There's a TV show called The Get Along Gang, and it was all like kind of anthropomorphic animals, and they were like mates. That was
my favorite moment of the day is I was going through some back issue bins with Nando, and he pulls out and he goes, "Fucking Partridge Family. Who reads this?" And put it back in and just continued.
Should have bought it. Well, Tony did then buy it.
Yeah.
I can't believe they made a Get Along Gang joke and no one got the reference.
Shame.
If you want to read your Chuck Norris style comics, get on with it.
Yeah. Speaking of more shame, Dan, do you want to bring some more shame before we go into the shout outs and a little bit extra we're going to do before the recommendations? Do you want to educate us, Dan? Do you want to?
We're going to go for a quick dictionary corner. This is Dictionary Corner. Ready?
As we all know, Dan Butcher's Dictionary Corner it's a long missed segment of the
Infamous.
show where we learn something. Usually that lesson is don't let Dan Butcher do this on a podcast.
Don't have your lunch before recording a podcast.
Yes. So
have you ever heard of this one? The Hungry Unicorn.
Oh God, I don't. No, I haven't. But I am absolutely terrified right now. And I just want to say before he says anything, listeners, I
do not condone or endorse this.
No, we do not endorse any of this.
But we might try it.
Right, a sex position where one male puts a strap-on dildo on his head. He sticks up the other male's ass while licking, sucking his balls. I gave Andy a Hungry Unicorn last night.
Do you know what? It makes sense though, from a physical point of view, doesn't it?
Do you know what? Yeah. Sometimes I really hate being a creative person and having an imagination.
I told you that story about a rather rough neighbour I had once, didn't I? Never told you the story. She goes, Tony, I can't get in. They've jammed the door. So I had to go. She's coming up with me the back, so I had to climb over the back fence with her to get in the back door to help her to get into her house. And she had, she's quite a rough lady, lovely lady, but quite raw with her language. And she had a sex toy that had a suction cup on it. I don't know why. I think you can put it on a wall or something. Yeah. And her son, who was about 15, for a laugh with his mates, had stuck it on his forehead, and he jammed the door closed because he couldn't get it off. And she used the phrase, "He looks like a fucking unicorn," like that, literally.
Mate, I don't want to be telling that kid where that toy's been.
Right. And also, I think we can all learn from this, can't we? We can all. There's something to be learned. Oh God!
It's like those, those like adverts we used to get with, the Kids Film Foundation used to make them about don't go near the electrical pylons.
Yeah, don't play about on railway tracks. Don't stick
dildos
to your forehead.
Don't fuck about in an electrical substation.
Don't fuck about with electrics, and don't steal your mum's dildo and stick it to your head. I never saw that advert. Well, maybe if there had been an advert like that kid wouldn't have made that mistake.
If there's any short film producers online would like to buy that idea from me.
Yeah. So I'm just going to say this is a warning to everyone. Just be safe out there. Anyway,
his name was Brian as well, that kid.
Anyway,
typical.
Yeah.
And do you have once again we're going to keep it on Dan because I think like Matt, you're learning so much this week, aren't you?
Yeah. But
it's been education as always.
The day of God on a Sunday lunchtime for you.
Yeah,
that's why I stick around all these years.
But we have a bit of news. We got a news section, haven't we, Dan?
Yeah, man. I thought I'd bring back sex robot news because
I just seen I got a text and I just glanced at it and it was from Dan. It said something about sex robot, but I haven't read it.
I said we're going to push sex robot news till next week. But
no. The people need to know it. There should be a theme tune like sex robot news. It's got to be some sort of theme. Someone create a theme and I'll put it in the next time we do this.
Inside Berlin's Cybrothel, the world's first AI brothel using virtual reality sex dolls.
Fuck AI.
So I know AI is going to annoy a lot of people, but
that's what you've got to do in there, Vince.
So basically, it's like a virtual reality sex with kind of half robot, half AI thing, and you can talk to them online. So you like get some AI chatbot.
Oh God, it's learning.
Yeah. So check this out. Alice Childs, she's a somatic sexologist, says Cybrothels AI sexual experiences could offer a safe place for people to explore their sexuality, but she warns, the Sydney-based sex educator says it warns against using AI to replace human intimacy, or it is a way to avoid confronting anxieties. A place without judgment is a place without vulnerability, and sex is inherently vulnerable. What do you think?
I don't know what that means. No, she's sort of backing both horses there, isn't she?
Yeah.
So what do you do? Do you plug yourself into like a rubber suit and it sucks you off or something?
You just get a dildo and smack it to your forehead and see if
then run round really fast with your arms out.
Yeah. It's like one of those fucking a GoPro. Just hanging in front of your face.
Be careful what sort of service you're kind of purchasing in case your finger slips and you press the Hungry Unicorn. No.
God. You can't unsend an email.
And then I remember what you said. We go from the Get Along gang to Hungry Unicorns.
They're both animal related.
That's a good point. Yeah. Who is it that believes that unicorns are real? Oh, it's someone on Geordie Shore.
What do you mean they're not real? Are you saying they're not real?
I was convinced a co-worker that what do you call it? Mermaids weren't real because she saw a National Geographic thing, and at the end it says this is all fake, and she still believes it. I was like, no, it's not. They're not real.
I saw that one. I know what you're talking about. It was a whole like hour-long special.
It's like a spoof, wasn't it?
Presented as if it was real.
Yeah.
With like fake video footage and like everything, and at the end they're like, psych.
Yeah, but she must have turned it off for the end because she was real.
That is a worry, isn't it? Especially with streaming services.
You just can't. You can't do that in this day and age. You just can't do it. Oh, God.
For all the deepfake stuff now, I like to take a video of myself on the phone and watch it back 5 minutes later. I was like, was that me? That doesn't seem like the same guy.
Yeah.
I would do.
Dan's a deep
And I was doing something completely normal.
Dan
I wasn't
is a deep fake. Yeah.
yeah. On that bombshell.
Lovely, thanks for that, Dan. They were a good couple of
That
segments.
was, I think we learned a lot there.
I'm in a very academic meeting this week, and I'm going to mention Hungry Unicorns, see if I can get it in.
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of one of the pioneers of sex robot news and reporting.
Yeah. And of course, we are as we have said on this show, we're going to keep abreast of the AI news.
Don't say that.
What?
Abreast.
Abreast.
We're going to do shouts.
Fuck you know, it's time for the shout outs. I told you it was going to get like this, Matt.
First?
I told you it was going to get like this. Well,
Yes, before that.
Hang on.
All right.
Sorry. All right. Never mind that shit. Check this out.
No.
Is that the link? Was that the link?
No. First, do we have it? We're going to do it at the end of the shouts. Do we have any shout outs, gents?
Yes, I do. Thank you for asking, Vince. The final issue of Glass City from Dave Cranner, Roman Gubsky, and Ryan Bretlack is back on Kickstarter. If you haven't jumped on this, you can get on all the issues. It's one, you know how Kickstarters do issue 1, then they do issue 1 and 2, issue 1 and 2 and 3. We've done it with Dirty Basement, but it really works actually. So you can get all the issues plus the newest issue. It's doing really well. Dave's a buddy of ours, and chuffed to see how well he's doing on it. Find out what happened to Gabe's little girl and what effect this will have on Glasgow, aka Glass City. On me, Third Bear Press just launched the new anthology issue of Boxes, so that's the second issue on Kickstarter. Not only does Stephen Ingram run a UK-based distro, he also makes his own great comics. He's also doing a bloody anthology. This dude never stops, does he? So go and have a look at Boxes issue 2. Drink and Draw. Thanks to everyone who came with a sort of impromptu drink and draw on Friday. Like, I think everyone drank more than the Queen Mother on that one. It went off.
That's a lot of drinking.
Yeah, a lot of drinking. Big congratulations to Brian Talbot for not only making it finally into the Eisner Hall of Fame, quite rightly too, but also for a great BBC news piece on him, which
I read that today.
Ian Ashcroft sent me earlier. Yeah, I'm going to say my favourite Talbot is Luther Arkwright, closely followed by that Batman story. I think he did. It's called Masks, and he's done a really good book. I've got it in front of me actually, which is about stories of drunken behaviour at conventions, which is a bit old now, but it's got that famous story about Grant Morrison shitting his pants whilst wearing a white suit, and it's worth a read. Really good. And again, went to the mart today, picked up fucking shitloads of comics. Great day. Thanks to Simon for the comics he gave me, and nice to meet Nando again from That Comic Smell. Go and listen to That Comic Smell. Great bunch of guys. There you go. That's my one.
Nice. Damn, what have you got?
Well, I'm currently doing a draw off this month for Little Troopers, the month of the military child, trying to generate some awareness and get some money towards that great charity who kind of help out kids whose parents are serving in the armed forces. There's a Kickstarter, Boston Metaphysical Society. I haven't clicked the link. That's very amiss of me. Boston Metaphysical Society, Volume 1, Special Edition hardback. Ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, a genius scientist battles supernatural forces. 1800s Boston. That smashed through its target, so go check that out. One upcoming, Steamroller Man 1. Do go check out that. An absurdly funny superhero adventure. You can save that. It's not released yet. Hoping to get Matthew onto the show and have a bit of a talk about it because it's a very interesting book. So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Crosses that line between mainstream and underground for me, that one.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It's I've had a chance to look at the campaign.
It feels a little like the Tick. The comic The Tick. Feels a lot like
I get that.
That's a great shout.
That's a good one, yeah.
We've got Lawless 10 years. No, nothing can be that or beat that. We got 25th and 26th of May 2024, Lawless, 10 years of Lawless Comic Con, Doubletree by Hilton Hotel Bristol. I can't read that fucking postcode. B51SNU. Sorry for swearing in the middle of that.
B52, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you see a faded sign at the side of the road, you can tell where it is.
There you go. Go check that out. Tickets available now. And that's the all for the shout-outs for me.
Nice. So,
just 15 miles away.
God. While this show goes off the rails, we've got something a bit extra for you all now. And Dan and Tony, do you want to lead us in on this?
Yeah, we got contacted by Jordan, our buddy Jordan from Zoop.
Hey.
Top geezer. I've never got a bad word to say about a geezer. He's super friendly. Yeah. He's put a load of guests our way, and they've got a bit of. He talks about a lot of projects, to be fair, but they've got a bit of a project where they're sort of crowdfunding themselves almost. So we thought, get him on. Let's do a quick 10-minute interview. Slot it in this week. So there you go. Okay, we've got a cheeky little surprise guest this week, extra to our regular programming. Dan, isn't that right?
Yes, this is a kind of added extra.
Where are you sitting? Are you sitting on the floor?
I'm sitting on the floor in the bedroom. So an added spicy element to this week's show.
We've got our buddy Jordan Plosky, the co-founder and CEO of Zoop, along with us. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you guys for making the time and for having this, special little extra segment.
No, man, we love your platform, and we've interviewed. Fortunately, you've sent us a few lovely guests along, and we promote, and have backed and enjoyed a lot of your books. So, for those that don't know, it's the publishing platform. Is that how I describe it, Jordan? A publishing platform. That's how I sort of.
We're more of a crowdfunding platform, I would say.
Okay. But a hybrid one in many ways, though. Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, think of Kickstarter, right? Everyone's familiar with crowdfunding with Kickstarter. They kind of are the Google of our space. So it's a tall hill to overcome. However, our big differentiator, to your point, Tony, is that we're a full service crowdfunding platform. Yeah. So in that hybrid publishing crowdfunding model, that's kind of where we are, because we handle marketing, we handle the project management, we handle printing, we handle fulfillment. Yeah. So it's like all the stuff that most creators don't want to do, and that keeps them from actually utilizing crowdfunding. It's sort of the new form of self-publishing. We're just that built-in support all under one roof.
I like to think of you somewhere between Image and Kickstarter.
Very.
If they're
very
the
much so.
That's where you'd be.
Look, the difference between us and a publisher like Image is we don't pay advances. That's kind of what the crowdfunding is for. And the other thing is we don't provide editorial, meaning as a creator, you get to make the exact story that you want. You don't have to change anything for any editors or, to get approved by a publisher to, for them to say like, yes, we want to publish this. You don't have to worry about retailers. You don't have to worry about distributors saying like, yay or nay to anything. Crowdfunding allows you to tell your story the way you want to tell it.
Good stuff, man.
And obviously there's going to be like some bigger creators who kind of like maybe don't want to work for the big boys anymore, want to go on their own. And going through Zoop is a perfect way of doing it, because they just have to do what they do best, which is make their comic. And then you take it from there.
Exactly. I mean, take a look at someone like Nick Pitara, for example. Yeah. Who had books at Image and he's done plenty of work for the big boys as well, but he gambled on himself. He put out his book Axe Wielder John, and it's our highest grossing campaign so far.
It's amazing.
Thank you. Over $210,000, and it's because he did a lot of that sort of a lot of that legwork in terms of promotion and getting people like excited for the book to come out. Yeah. But when it came time to like knowing that he wanted to put it out himself, having that infrastructure and support was really important to him, and that's where we came in. So, having it all under one roof kind of saves creators months at time, as opposed to like, I have to go find a marketing person. I have to go find which printer and get, samples and quotes and negotiate rates with them. And, same with fulfillment. So the fact that like we have it all dialed in and we've used, the same vendors multiple times now at this point, I think we've actually run the most crowdfunding campaigns in the comic space, like more than any other, person or consultant out there.
Course,
we've done almost 150 campaigns so far. So
bloody hell, that many. Christ.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about, because I know the thing is that I always notice about Zoop is you do, like Dan alludes to there, you get the big fish. You've had Chaikin, Fingerman. Is it Mike Marici's doing Barbaric with you? Is that right?
So that's Vault Comics.
Yeah.
This is a slight tweak on the model. So
Okay.
we're kind of set up. We're flexible enough to offer something like this. So Vault, we were talking with them. They weren't necessarily looking to crowd fund. They didn't have like financial goals. They wanted to grow their user base. So what we did was we put together a crowd building campaign for them.
Okay.
So they're giving away a free digital copy of Barbaric Born in Blood #1, and all you have to do is sign up with your email address. Boom, you get your free PDF. And now the more people that sign up, the more freebies that get unlocked along the way. So 100 people sign up. Now everybody has access to this. 200 people, 250, 300, and so on. So not only do you get your free comic, but now you have access to all this other stuff as well. And if you do want, you could buy, a trade paperback of Barbaric. You could buy a T-shirt. There's pins and other items that you can buy if you want. But hey, if you just want to read the free digital PDF, sign up, get that, and get all the other freebies. Because hundreds of other people have already signed up too.
That's a great idea, man. So yeah, spreading across different ways, because some people just buy comics on crowdfunding. There's a lot of people out there who just do that. Some people just buy comics through previews or Marvel previews, or it's going to be. But that's where I was going with that, because you've caught all these big fish. You've had like all these successes now. I think Bob Fingerman's book doubled its money. I think if not more so. I think
Yeah, I think we had a $10,000 goal. I think we went up over 20,000. We did, the Jack Kirby campaign. Did over 60 grand. Shaken's campaign over 60 grand. The Conan the Barbarian artist edition book that we did, was over 120, 130 grand, something like that. So we've been very fortunate with some of the projects that we've been working on and the success of them. Yeah.
And so as part of that building program, you've almost got a program now or a system where you're sharing the company out. Is that but trust me, I can't balance a checkbook, man. Okay. You explain it. I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Yes. So Zoop, we are a crowdfunding platform. However, we are not set up for regulation crowdfunding through the SEC. What that means is we could do pre-orders of products, but what we have going on right now is we're actually raising a round of capital at republic.com/Zoop. And that's equity crowdfunding. That allows anybody, you don't have to be an accredited investor. You don't have to invest $10,000, $15,000, whatever it is. You can invest as little as $150, and we have some physical perks that start at $250. But what this does is it allows you to support Zoop and contribute to our growth so we can continue providing these campaigns and providing services to these creators and helping grow the world of crowdfunding and the world of comics. So it's very much like supporting a crowdfunding campaign, except when you back ours, you're actually investing in Zoop, and the reward that you get is shares in the company. So, it's a way to sort of fractionally, I guess, to do fractional investment, with hundreds of dollars versus tens of thousands of dollars. And if you go to that site, republic.com/Zoop, you'll see we've raised over $100,000 so far. Nice. It's gonna say that our maximum goal is $1.24 million. That's not our actual goal, so it's slightly different than what you would see on Zoop. That's just the maximum that we are allowed to raise under this SEC regulation. Yeah. So it's a whole bunch of complicated stuff. But every dollar that comes in is coming back to Zoop. We get to collect it all, whether we wind up at $110,000 or $400,000 or $1 million. It's all coming to Zoop. Don't worry about that max goal. I just have to let people know, because it's not all or nothing like it is on Zoop or Kickstarter, for example. Yeah.
Gotcha. So that's the idea, is you're buying into a share with the company, and I guess you'll get emails from you and updates and freebies and all that sort of thing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's correct. So investing in Zoop, backing us in this campaign, like I said, it's an investment. You will own shares of Zoop. You then will be getting, those quarterly updates that other investors get, so that you'll kind of get a peek behind the scenes. You'll know what our progress is looking like. But we do also have physical perks. So starting at $250 and going up from there, we have exclusive comics that are part, another incentive for those reward tiers. So at $250, you get an exclusive comic with a cover by Des Taylor, of Scarlet Couture, pop comic artist, one of our first campaigns that we did.
We know him. Yeah, it's good. Yeah,
it's 2021. He's a great guy. And then it goes up from there. So 500, you get the exclusive comic, but then you get the black and white version as well, and then $1,000 the exclusive, the black and white, the virgin variant, and then we have the foil variant and the metal variant, and then we'll have some CGC graded books as well. So every the more you invest, the more rare those books become.
Yeah.
The more limited or run that they're going to be, because there's only like a handful of people that invest $10,000 or $25,000, for example, and we're only printing for what we need. So
interesting,
super cool.
It's a nice way. It's a nice way of spreading it through.
Get our Boss covered, man. I've loved Boss books.
you do, don't you? Every time he sees one, he gets excited. But it's a lovely way to sort of spread a comics creating company amongst fandom, I guess. Is it you're almost part of a company? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about equity crowdfunding is this allows us to go directly to our users, our backers, our fan base, and kind of activate them and get their support, not just for the projects that we run, but for the company overall. Look, we have a large number of people who use Zoop come back and purchase and back multiple campaigns. So we know that we have a lot of people that really enjoy what we're doing, that probably want to see us keep doing what we're doing, putting out the content, putting out the books that we're putting out. So the way to do that is,
I'm one of them, man. I've backed a few of your books, very much. I think I'm on 4 or 5 now. Yeah. Good stuff.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Well,
if you'd like to see us keep doing this, then Tony,
that's why you're here, mate. That's why you're here. That's why we've got you on. Yeah.
Visit republic.com/Zoop. Check out the page. You'll see, all the information about the company there. There's a lot of stuff that's, you could take your deep dive if you want, or just, on the surface and see what some of our traction has been like, some of our high level milestones. And you'll see that, I think we're, just about 60 investors so far. Like I said, over $100,000. So, there's still about a month and a half left of the campaign. So, we just keep pushing every day, and thanks to guys like you who help us kind of spread the word, and.
Well, you got us relaxed with it, John. Support. Yeah, so that's good. Let's quickly touch on that before. I know we haven't got you for long, but let's touch on what you've got out at the moment, what you've got coming up. Is there anything you wanted to mention?
So out right now, we just launched this anthology called I'm going to butcher it now. I think Comics Are Dying, the comic.
I've seen that one. Yeah,
Rory Donald's in that. Our buddy Rory Donald's in that. Yeah.
Yes.
So as we speak, I'm now seeing it just funded. It just launched yesterday.
Nice.
We already funded. It's at $5,001 out of its $5,000 goal. We have another campaign by Paul Cornell. So we did the completed Saucer Country omnibus with Paul Cornell.
Oh, of course you did.
Him and Ryan Kelly. We did that in 2022. That's been fulfilled. So Paul's back with another campaign.
Rachel Smith.
Correct, with Rachel Smith. We launched last week. They have a hefty goal, $20,000 goal. But we're almost halfway there in the first week, so they're looking good as well. Nice. That Barbaric Born in Blood with Vault Comics. We have a few days left on that, so jump on that. Again, it's free. Time Breakers from Chris Weston. This was a book that was part of the Helix imprint at DC Comics in the 90s.
Okay.
And so he got the rights back. This was with him and the late Rachel Pollack.
Yeah.
But there's about 2 days left on this. This is the first time that this miniseries is collected. It's only been in single issues, and it's never been collected in the 25-ish years that it's been out.
It's weird, isn't it? It's only now that people are kind of realising that Rachel Pollack, what a great writer she was. Because the Doom Patrol stuff has just been collected, I think, as well. So it's very timely, I think, that Chris is. We love Chris. We know him from conventions and stuff. He's a top dude. Yeah, the most detailed artist in the world as well.
Chris is a super nice guy. It's been a pleasure working with him. We have some other stuff coming up. I think I mentioned to you guys off the air, but Patrick Horvath, the creator from Beneath the Trees, Where Nobody Sees, he's doing his follow-up book with us. That's going to be launching in May. We're going to have an art book by Adriana Mello, who's the artist on Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy for DC.
I know.
We have
lovely artist.
Art book by Christian Ward that's coming up. We have this other book launching, I want to say next week-ish, by a writer named M.H. Calley, and she's brought on a who's who of all female creators: Liana Kangas, Elsa Charretier, if I'm pronouncing that properly. Skylar Patridge and some other like really big name female artists all coming out for this one. So that one's going to be great. And just come back,
keep looking back.
All the projects.
Yeah. And I know Fingerman's finished as well. Is all the art's done? And that must be getting ready for publishing, I guess. Is it for printing?
Yeah, exactly that. So I know that he kept adding and adding to his book. So people who bought that one are going to be pleasantly surprised with, how many extra pages are going to be in there. But then, we're prepping everything for print as soon as that's all finished. And then, it takes a little while to print. Yeah. And then, of course, fulfillment. But yeah, that was a great campaign. Super happy for Bob. I know he's a friend of yours, so yeah.
Yeah. Are you doing any events? Do you do any like conventions as a sort of outreach thing, or do you do anything like that?
Yeah, we don't set up a table, but that's not something that necessarily benefits us. What we tend to do is I'll go to these conventions and walk up and down Artist Alley, introduce myself, and kind of pitch our services to all these creators. And that's kind of like that's one of the big ways that we've gotten a lot of these creators on board the platform. There's social media, there's word of mouth, but a lot of it is, going, shaking hands, kissing babies, and at least explaining like why come to us over Kickstarter, for example, and just the ease of using our platform and being able to continue doing your freelance work and everything else that you need to do on top of a crowdfunding campaign. I think we just make it easier than ever,
totally.
Especially
I
for working creators.
See, some, not all of them, but some professional creators do occasionally have problems finishing a Kickstarter. I think I don't think it's a secret, and I think having something like you is a much preferable situation for them to be in because they don't have to worry about because they're artists or writers. They've never had to deal with postage.
It's such a different skill set that some people can't or struggle to do it.
Yeah,
it is, and I think a lot of creators kind of shoot themselves in the foot before they even launch the campaign because maybe they didn't even account for shipping. Fees and what it's going to cost for packaging materials and how to package hundreds of packages.
Where am I going to
Where am I going to store this stuff? I think that they just wind up getting overwhelmed. I don't think anyone has like malicious intent. I don't think people wind up like thinking they're going to steal money. But like I think that when you get to a certain point, you're like, I don't have time for this. I don't know how to do this. I don't have a printer. I don't have time to package all these packages. And I think that's kind of where we come in and help. It's like you don't even have to think about it. We've got the printers, we've got the fulfillment handled, and it just makes it that much easier. And I think that we've been building up trust, and people realize like, if I back a Zoop campaign, I'm going to get my
that's the idea.
My rewards. Yeah,
that's what you need, man. And one last question, because I know you're pushed for time, but when are you doing Heroes?
It's always on my radar. I was there the last couple of years, and we're looking at it again this year. So yes,
make sure you let me know.
Most likely.
I'll be there. Yeah, I'm going there. Hey, so we'll go have a beer or something. Yeah, good stuff. Good.
That'd be great, man.
Good. And allow me to say it for you. So republic.com/Zoop.
Correct.
For the crowdfunding for Zoop. And if you want to just go to Zoop, go to zoop.gg. I'm right in saying that off the top of my head.
Zoop.gg. Yep.
And you can see all the marvelous. You got a swipe at the top, takes you through all the current projects.
We do, and if you want to find us on social media, we're at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WeAreZoop. And if you want to drop us a line, hello@wearezoop.com.
Great stuff, man. Always a pleasure, Jordan. Thanks, mate.
Appreciate it, you guys. Thank you for having me on.
Well done, chaps.
Thank you, mate. All good lad he is.
Stuff. And,
we carried on chatting for a couple of minutes after, and we got a sneak peek at what's coming up. Very exciting.
Yeah,
we can't say anything, but it's lots of good stuff coming down the pipeline.
Nice.
Yeah, very much so.
So definitely check it out because there's some great stuff on there. We've got some great creators involved as well. So,
nice, easy access website. Nice scrolling top. Got all the current ones. Easy to manage. Yeah.
The fact it's all curated and kind of it's just really well done. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It lets the creators create and not have to worry about the distro and all that caper.
Yeah. So definitely check that out. And speaking of checking things out, I was going to make an inappropriate joke then, but it just feels
that wouldn't be us. Don't do that, please. Got to bring it right down with that.
Sorry, guys. I'm
inappropriate jokes.
I know. I apologise. I'm always the one that just really brings the mood down.
Disgusting.
Sorry. Sorry, should we just recommend some comics then? Just so,
Okay.
Yeah.
And our lovely guest is going to go first. So, Matt, what would you like to recommend to our listeners?
Alrighty. So I have 2 recommends. Should I fire them both off, or do you want to round
Why don't
table
you?
it?
Why don't you do one now and do one right at the end? You can finish off the episode for us.
You can bookend us.
Do one right in the end, like the Hungry Unicorn.
Oh God, we've corrupted him. We've corrupted another one.
Right, you know we're going to do T-shirts. That's going on one of them.
All right, so my first recommendation I discovered when I was researching for my comic Prawn the Jumbo Shrimp. I didn't really know much about kaiju comics, and I thought I should see what everybody else is doing before I just jumped in and started making my own. So I came across Kill All Monsters. This was put out by Dark Horse, and the writer is Michael May, and the artist is Jason Copeland. I really wasn't familiar with either of these guys, but this is a really good book. It's Monsters Rule the World. Humanity's last hope is a squad of giant robots and their skilled pilots, all from different backgrounds, each with a unique reason to fight. Can we survive the conflict? Are we worthy of saving? A familiar yet wholly original story about war, survival, and the human spirit told through gigantic scale battles fought by memorable characters. So going in, I thought it was just going to be just like senseless, mindless fights with monsters and giant robots and stuff, which it has in abundance. But the story was more than that, and it goes into basically the premise is the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima created these monsters, and then the monsters took over the world. So it's like an alternate timeline. So from 1950 onward, these monsters terrorize people, and then the world is like gone to hell. And then there's a group of resistance fighters who create these robots to fight the monsters. And then it gets into the whole thing of, mankind creating these problems, and then they create more problems on top of that to solve the problem. And it gets you thinking about like AI technology and like what is the solution for mankind screwing up the world in the first place? Is it more technology? And like some people believe that mankind should just be wiped out and the monsters should rule. So it's kind of thought provoking, and the style is really dynamic. Sort of feels a bit like Daniel Warren Johnson.
Nice.
With like the black and white, not quite as kinetic as he is, but still very good. And it's like I guess it was a web comic because it's like a horizontal format.
Okay.
Up here. I can't show it to you guys, but anyway, it's very good. So it's action packed, but it also has gets you thinking about humanity and technology and stuff. So I enjoyed it. And it's a nice hardback from Dark Horse.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it looks nice actually. I've not seen that before.
Dark Horse always put together a nice book, don't they, when they do collections?
Yep.
Nice.
No, wait.
Tony, what's your
I'm just going to do one this week, guys.
Yeah.
I know, because we're a bit pushed for time, and I wanted to talk a bit more about this one, so I'm going to cut my second one, move it to next week. But the first one, the only one I'm going to talk about this week is Browne and Knowle, Volume 2, Issue 1, by Paul Ashley Browne. This is very much adults only, so hold on to your hats for some of this. He sent me I love it when you get a letter. You know what I mean? Isn't that nice with a little sketch on it? He sent me this. How cool. Further melancholic missives from Paul Ashley Browne, grizzled veteran war poet and conscientious objector of the UK comic battlefield, down to his last stubby B3 pencil and drowning in the usual small press zine trenches. This class war will be the last war, where lovers, not losers, see if he's possibly not wrong in the latest frontline dispatch of Browne and Knowle. Isn't that a lovely way to describe it?
Yeah.
That's great. And he's got great handwriting as well. Look at that. There you go. All in capitals. But cover image is of an older woman. She's standing on the path in a park looking at the reader. There's a haunting quality to that. She's kind of observing us in her line face and grey hair, but there's a strong presence to that drawing, I think. Lovely colour. It's A5, a black and white interiors. It's only £5, which is these days pretty good, I think. That's £1, Matt, for you. He sent it through to me. We talk quite a lot. He appeared on the back cover of Atomic Hercules 4. We seem to send each other comics backwards and forwards, and I always used to see him at BAM. I think was where I last saw him. when I read a collection of stories, I'm not sure if you guys are like this. When I read a collection of stories by a single person, especially when the single person has at least written them and he's written and drawn all of these, I often begin to interpret themes that are common throughout the issue. I don't know if you do. Perhaps not themes, perhaps state of mind, perhaps thoughts, perhaps an era in someone's life when you see a collection of stuff. And this one has had me thinking a lot. And very different, the stories. There's two that are autobiographical, I think. But at the centre is this play that Paul uses, and he hints at it there a bit, is loneliness. And I'll see if you agree. I'll give you a quick run through the three separate stories in there, and see what you think about them. So the first one, Sunday in the Park, it's entitled, and all of his stories are titled. Some of them are, I think most of them are. And there's a meeting between a man, which I kind of think is probably Paul. Looks a bit like Paul. And he's sitting on a bench in the park, and he meets the woman who's on the cover, this older woman, and they talk about being out with how nice it is to be out in the fresh air. And I sense there's a bit of a lockdown feel to it, when we were all going out and walking, weren't we? And people seem to be walking back then. We don't seem to do it anymore, do we? We're out more, but we don't seem to do it. And there's a conversation about, she says, you must be new to the park. He says, no, normally I sit on a bench down there. And she says, this is my park. I used to live here. He said, I don't normally come to this park. As a kid, I used to go to this park. And there's a twist at the end of it, which is really good. And I love a twist at the end, which isn't necessarily like she turns into a vampire or anything like that. But because he's got the ability to play with the form and play with the faces and this sort of thing, it gets you think there's like a little twist in how she is right at the end. And you think, oh, what's she saying there? That's interesting. Okay. So, I mean, when you look at that one, from the face of it, very slice of life, very, perhaps if it is Paul, very personal to something, you begin to interpret. You begin to think he's done that himself. That's one of those ones I think that he's done it. And it's about sitting on a park bench on your own. So it has this theme of loneliness again. And then what you really look like, which is a great title for a story. Yeah. And as a man, he's married.
That's a great title.
Isn't it great? Yeah. In many ways, V, it's a little bit like, and Dan, it reminds me a bit of Hidden Lives, this somehow.
Okay.
A little bit of that in there. There's a man, he's married, he's got a kid. He lies to his wife and he tells her he's busy at work. He says he's going to have to pull an all-nighter to do a project he's doing. And you realise that he's texting her that, but he's actually sitting in his car. And his wife's clearly very lonely at home. She's a little bit worried about him because she loves him. But what he's actually doing, he's going to a hotel room where he's hired two men to role play to have rough sex with him. Right? See there? Oh, right. And there is a racial element to this.
Okay.
I won't go too deeply. I'll let you read it.
No, I think I can understand what you're saying there.
Yeah. And there's such a play on darkness, such a play on Lynchian is massively overused, but it's almost like kitchen sink Lynchian. There's this play on true emotions about his wife's at home with the kid. She talks about how good her kid is, and she's sitting there, I'm going to eat this and watch telly or something. And all the time he's going to this room, knocking on the door, and a man opens it wearing a mask, and he gets treated badly. But there's a massive turnaround in it. So one of the men begins to care about him.
Right.
And you get this reverse of these two men who'd previously been the predatory, I don't know,
abusers,
men, whatever you want to call them, are discussing the feelings that one of them has for this man and about how he never calls anymore. And it's just incredibly strong. I don't think I've read anything quite like that.
Wow, okay.
It plays a little bit into the story that we did, Dan, when we did Hidden Lives, The last story returns to a much more autobiographical vein, but is in itself quite hard-hitting. It's a narrated day-to-day story, which I kind of I like in a monologue narration. And we go back to what we found and we really loved. A lot of the stories, fiction as well. I enjoy that first-person narration thing. We talked a bit about with June last week, and it talks about times past, times now, and how you think about the past, comparing it to what you are now, and how it affects who you are and where you go and what you say and what you think and everything. Very good. There's a very big depth of personality, a very big depth of sensitivity and knowledge of the form with Paul. A I think it's probably the best small press thing I've read in a while. I know I say that every week about something or other, but it had a real impact on it. I put it aside because, I told you that last week I had like this backlog of small press that I was going to get through eventually, and I put this one to the side and I read it, and I was actually meeting Falpy in a coffee shop yesterday morning, and he arrived literally just as I finished it, and I was like, bloody hell, and that's a strong book. There's a little of the Mike McMahon in his art somewhere. But it's more everyday. He said that Dread. I showed you the Dread picture, didn't I? That he drew on the wrapper for the envelope. He stuck it in. There's a little bit of that in there somewhere. So I don't know where if you can go to paulashleybrowne.co.uk. That's his website. Go and have a look at. There's loads on there. He's promised me in the letter, because I was always going on about how much I love the Talented Mr. Titty comic, being a favourite of mine, which I think he does with his mate. And he says, coming soon, hopefully, the Talented Mr. Titty. And then he drew a picture of him along the bottom there in the letter. So go and buy anything. Go and buy anything by him. I'd love to publish his stuff. It's certainly something me and Falpy have talked about. But there you go. Browne and Knowle, Volume 2. I got Volume 2, Issue 2 as well, which again is another fucking punch you in the gut roller coaster. So I thought I'm just going to stick to Issue 1. But they're both available now, and really good. Yeah,
awesome.
Really good.
Awesome.
There you go.
Dan, how do you follow
Didn't
that?
you mention there was another? Is it Johnny Ryan comic? The guy who done.
What was it called?
My Son.
Was it the one? It's called I Fucked a Horse or something. Is that the
something
name of
like
it?
that. I was like, I can't imagine what that's going to be like.
I still remember sitting in a pub with you reading it. Was it you and Cliff going, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Unbelievable. I just couldn't believe it. Like it was. I was reading like saying criminal. It was like it's just unreal. I went back for an old one because we were talking about golden ages, and I really got a kick out reading this back in the day. And it's Alan Moore doing the Superman Man of Tomorrow. I don't think you can get it in this print anymore because it's got to be over 30 years old. The price on the back is $6.95.
No, cool.
You won't get a graphic novel nowadays like that for $6.95. And there's a collection of Alan Moore. I can't remember which comics they're taken from.
I did an NIA on that story.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So on the first one, you got like a Swamp Thing crossover.
I read that today, mate. I read that today.
Yeah, that's great.
That's one with Solomon Grundy.
No, this one's one where he has like this red Kryptonian moss.
Oh, I know.
That kind of infects Clark, Superman, and if you didn't know,
issue as well.
If you didn't know Superman and Clark Kent, there's one in the same. I didn't want to
What
spoil
the
that.
fuck?
Dropping bombs. So he ends up with Swamp Thing. The second one's a great one with I think it's Dave Gibbons does the art for The Man Who Has Everything.
Yeah.
And in the Fortress of Solitude, Batman, Robin, and Wonder Woman going to see Superman on his birthday, and they find the fortress kind of Superman and around, and they come in the center of this room, and he's kind of got this rose-like creature kind of like on his chest, and it's making him see the idealized version of his life. And Mongol was in there who stuck it on him, and then the three of them have to fight Mongol. And
didn't they do that in a version of one of the animated series as well, didn't they?
They might have done.
I think so. Yeah.
It's funny because they're walking in from like the jet into the Fortress of Solitude, and Batman and Robin like meet up with Wonder Woman, and she sort of says, "Come on, let's get inside before you two freeze." And Robin turns around to Batman. He's like, "Us freeze?" She's like wearing a swimsuit. And then he's like, think clean thoughts, chum. And then you see him like Batman with a slight smile.
I love that. Yeah.
Absolute geezer.
It's like the moment in Is It Logan's Run where I was talking about this on the Slack, and the one in Logan's Run where he says to, is it Richard York or his name is, says to who's the woman in Logan's Run? Jenny Agutter. Yeah, he says, take your clothes off before they freeze on you. Good idea.
Great idea.
Yeah.
And then the final one, which is kind of like the final Superman story, whatever happened to Man of Tomorrow, Alan Moore, Kurt Swan, George Perez, and just like it's the final days of Superman in the story, and it's
a weird one, that isn't it? Because it's Kurt Swan, but it's Perez inking.
Yeah,
and I think Perez almost gives him too much. Kurt Swan, he's like a barrel, isn't he? Superman, he's like an old school strongman. But I think George Perez, as much as I love George Perez, he gives him almost too much. Doesn't he give him a 6-pack almost at one point and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a weird amalgamation of the two. It's an odd one.
Yeah, me and Pete Watson did that issue together.
Yeah, it's great.
NIA. Yeah, really good.
With like the League of Supervillains from the future turns up and sort of says, "Well, we know Superman dies today. We're going to be a part of this," and they're all on board till it starts going a bit pear-shaped, and they're like, "Oh, didn't think it was going to be like this," and leave. But it's a great ending. It's a great book. Like if you can pick this up, Superman Man Tomorrow with Animal writing stuff, it's really fun comics.
I think they've done like a hardbacky type version with some of those stories in. Yeah. Okay.
Well worth a read. So, not always new comics recommended on.
And like, but I think what you're trying to do there is bring a bit of positivity, weren't you? So you always get positivity with Superman stories, don't you?
Yeah,
Not necessarily those ones, to be fair. But
I would struggle to read. I struggle to write a Superman story. Like when I read stuff like that, it's like I just feel like some of that stuff is beyond me because it's so well done and like an understanding of the character that.
I can pick up and read a Kurt Swan Superman story any day of the week and enjoy it.
I mean, for me, I think it's one of the reasons it's so difficult to write a Superman's story. When you put all the adventure aside, is Superman's about optimism. Like the two pillars of DC, Superman is optimism, Batman is cynicism, and that's why more people can write or create Batman because we live in a very cynical
It's very
world.
easy to do the cynicism, but doing the kind of true uplifting hope stories is fucking tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, celebrate them when they're done well because we need a lot more optimism in the world. My one that I read on Comixology, it's a Comixology original because I've got Prime.
I felt sure you'd do one of those ones that just hit Global Comics this week, the Rook.
Oh, right. I want to like the Ghost Machine books.
Yeah.
Because that's something I want to talk about on a future episode.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
I read them about 2 hours ago.
Right. Okay. Then
I fucking loved them.
Then
real.
Yeah. I've read Rook, and we will discuss. We maybe have a little bit of a Ghost Machine centric little episode because I think it's interesting what they're doing. So we'll put that to the side. Other than to say, read them if you can. They're really fucking good. The one I picked out
3 books, right?
3 books.
Ghost Machine. Okay.
Yeah. There's what's the other one? There's a previous one that came out along the same.
There's Redcoat and Geiger.
And then there's one that came out previous to Ghost Machine, but it's part of the timeline.
Geiger and Redcoat are within a same kind of universe. Rook is separate. They talk about that in the book.
What's the one about the robots army officer? One of my favourite books.
Yeah.
Go to the back of the issue. You find
is that Junkyard Joe?
Junkyard Joe, that's it. So that's associated with those as well.
Yeah.
Junkyard Joe is easily one of my favourite reads of last year. It's brilliant, and it's out in a collection now. Go get it.
So we might do, I think I want to do a Ghost Machine sort of focus because it's quite.
The art in that Rook, man. Fuck. Talking about it, but
Apart from I agree, Tony. That's what I'm going to say. We'll say all of this off air.
Okay.
My pick was issue 1 of a book called She's Running on Fumes, which is a Comixology original. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
I have not either.
This is because I borrowed it from the Comixology sort of library, the Kindle sort of library. So I thought, and it looked like a crime book. Illustrated by Tyler Jenkins, watercolors by Hilary Jenkins, written by Dennis Hopeless. Dennis Hopeless wrote Avengers Arena, which was probably one of the last times I truly enjoyed some Marvel books. I love those. Avengers Arena and then Avengers Undercover, I think. Afterwards. I love those titles. Anyway, I know he's done some other books since, but I thought, this is quite interesting. Their sort of cover, the name caught my interest, and the cover itself of issue 1, which doesn't scream issue 1 like big blockbuster sort of like, there's no real sort of design so much to the cover. So I think it could go just off, it won't be on people's radar because it looks, compared to some comic covers which really get you in the, but the image on the cover, now when you look at it more, it's this woman who's a car is sinking and you can see like the bonnet of the car and she's sort of being dragged underwater with it, which is a cool sort of image, but it almost looks like an illustration rather than a cover. But I thought I'll just give it a shot, and it wasn't until I was about and it took me a few. I will say it's a slower character crime story read, and I was about 15 pages in before it clicked. Do you know what I mean? It found a rhythm. Have you ever found that sometimes that there's some points where you're thinking, I could pull the plug on this, but I'll keep going for a couple more pages, and before I knew it, a couple more pages became a couple more pages, became a couple more pages before I was like, oh, the issue's finished. And you're in then, aren't you? And it is, if I was to read the synopsis, this is an interesting thing about this book. If you look at the synopsis for the individual issues that are on like Amazon or Comixology or whatever, they are just one line about the book. And if you see them out of context, it doesn't really... Like, issue 1 is, a near-fatal car wreck and 4 kilos of missing cocaine changes my mum's life forever. And I was like...
That's a mum I want to know.
I was like, what? Because I didn't... when I looked at it, and it was when I looked it up, because I read this completely out of the blue. I looked that up, so I've got a reference for this week's show, and I was like, I can't... It's got to be more than that. I can't just read that out. And it's looking at the entire series, of which there's been 3 issues so far, that I was quite surprised by it. Because the synopsis for the whole series is by Dennis Hopeless. When I was 3 years old, my mother started a chop shop with a junkyarder named Corn Dog. My criminal father's brain was damaged in a wreck that almost killed him. With hospital bills piling, us kids to feed, and $50,000 of biker cocaine gone missing, Grand Theft Auto was Mum's best shot at survival. Dennis Hopeless pens this 1980s rural crime thriller based on his family's real-life secrets, which put the book in a completely different light. Because I read it and I was like, oh, this is it's sort of like an independent sort of rural crime. You're following this mother who's, you can tell she kind of wants to leave her husband, who's a bit of he's a bit of a maniac in some ways. He's clearly making money from crime, but she doesn't really know, and she's fed up, and she wants to just she's on the edge of taking the kids and getting out. And he comes, the husband's there, and then he's in a car wreck. He's been like another car ploughed into him, and he's in the hospital, and all of a sudden 2 people visit the mum and sort of say, he's in the hospital, but he had stuff in the car with him at the time. And she's like, what? And she puts it together that he had $50,000 worth of cocaine in the car. And when they go to the wreck of the car, it's not there. So it by the end of the issue, you can tell it's got a lovely sort of line that she's got into that mindset that she's going to have to do something about it. So she's forced into this criminal life. And it was, I was with her at the end of the book. It does take a few pages to go through, and the artwork is pretty loose. The watercolor's lovely though. It's nice to see this sort of it's like a scratchy sort of style that Jenkins has. But yeah, it's obviously it's not all ages. But if you like that sort of Midwestern American sort of like big open landscape, that sort of rural crime sort of story, definitely check it out. The issues are only digital issues are only like £1.91. They're probably only a couple of dollars each one. But when I read that synopsis, it's put it on a whole. It spun it for me in a real kind of like, what the fuck? How much of? So now I'm thinking, because when I was reading it, there was some mad, the car crash and the cocaine. It feels like a mad. I've read a lot of independent crime comics. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of this sort of stuff going on. So when I read it, I thought, more of the same. But then I hear that there may be some real life information. It makes it infinitely more fascinating. So yeah, she's running on Fumes, available now. Independent comic. I read it on if you got Kindle and you got the Kindle library, you can just borrow it on there.
Sounds awesome.
But check it out.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And Matt, take us
Finish
home.
it off. All right. So the final one I want to talk about is a combination of a film and also comics. So it's a guy by the name of John Callahan. He was a comic strip artist for newspapers. But the movie they made about him was called Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot, and it stars Joaquin Phoenix and Jonah Hill, and it's on Amazon. They produced it, and it's super good. So if you have Prime, You can watch it for free, and it basically documents his life. And he was an alcoholic since the age of 13. And in 1972, he was in a car accident. His friend was driving, and he became a quadriplegic. And it wasn't until he became a quadriplegic that he decided he was going to be a cartoonist. And he used cartoons as a way to, emotionally vent and as therapy, like we were saying earlier. And it helped pull him out of depression. But also, he went through AA, and the Jonah Hill character and the other people that he talks about in AA really shaped his life. And they steer clear of all like the, I don't know, sappy cliches and stuff of these kind of uplifting movies. But I found it to be very inspirational. But also his comics are super funny. I first found him at a local museum. They were doing an art show, and the actual comic strip was a picture of these cowboys on a posse, and they see an empty wheelchair, and it says, the caption says, "Don't worry, he won't get far on foot." So he's a quadriplegic, but he has the levity to make fun of his own condition, and he pulls no punches. He'll make fun of politics, religion, minorities. Like, it's super offensive. If you were easily offended, you probably wouldn't like it. But like Gary Larson said, he says, I like Callahan's work for two reasons. One, they're just plain funny, and two, it makes my own work look normal. So it has like a farce.
But it's like a coping mechanism that you're extending to other people in a way, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. And it's sort of Far Side in the way it's humor, but it's like Far Side kicked up a couple of notches, and it's super funny. But like I said, if you're easily offended, don't read his books, his comics, but definitely check out the movie. It's super entertaining. Don't worry, he won't get far on foot.
It's interesting because I remember the trailer for that movie. I had no idea it was about an artist.
Very well recommended. I mean, well acted, and it's a great story. And
I definitely have to check.
I think anybody.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Not just comics people. So.
Awesome.
I'm away in a hotel room on my own all week, so I might give it a go. Yeah.
Oh my word.
Easy.
I'm not saying anything. That's for the listeners to decide. And I hope that they have decided that this has been an enjoyable episode. We've certainly learned a lot. We've lived a lot. We've loved a lot. And we've certainly talked about a lot of comics. Tony, you love a lot. You know you love... No, don't answer that because I'm scared.
Every day.
But certainly... if you enjoyed it, please get in touch with us and let us know if you want some more of this, some more topics. Like I say, we've got some fun plans for some future episodes and stuff to talk about. And if there's anything you want us to talk about, whether it be charity events or new comics events, anything of any kind, there's several different ways you can get in touch with us. You can email us, awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media, on Instagram, @awesomecomicspod, on X. It's just fucking wrong saying that, though, isn't it? But on X, it's
so good
@theawesomepod. On both, we'll be, of course, posting about what we've talked about on the show. Just nothing but positivity of comics, whether it's we're talking about what we've loved on this week's episode or just some cool art, just to make you feel happy. It certainly made us happy, and that's what it's all about. And,
the memes channel's great. Rant channel's great.
Oh yeah, on the Slack, yes. Get in touch with us on the Slack because there's a wonderful.
I put something in the memes channel about Lebanon today.
I saw that and I laughed.
Very mature, very mature. And thank you for listening to us, whether it was on the website awesomecomics.podbean.com. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, leave a review, helps get the word out about the show and everything we talk about on a weekly basis. And you can also rate and review on Spotify, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so please do that. And if you listen to us on other places like Amazon, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife, what other networks are we on, Tony?
Yeah, we're also on a network I overheard at the Comic Mart today. My day is a rotation of finger banging and comic bagging.
Whoa.
I hope he doesn't get those mixed up. Anyway.
Sure, that's contaminating the comics in some degree.
Right, nerd.
Not just the comics.
Unless he washes his hands, you know what I mean? There can't be having that.
Yeah. If there's one thing we want to inspire people
that's not a 9.2
to
now.
have on this show, it's good hygiene. Stay hygienic out there, everyone.
I hope he told them that before they slabbed his comics.
Yeah.
I bet they slabbed his comics.
And
Anyway,
you're slabbing it, opening it years later. Cool, that smells
oh
good.
dear, it's just fermenting.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'd like to say God bless America for introducing us to the term finger banging. That's definitely come from you guys. One of my favourite Americanisms.
You must be very proud, Matt.
I am.
Isn't that like the 43rd Amendment, finger banging?
Oh God. Anyway, Tony, where can people find you online, etc.?
Neveronanything.com.
Dan.
Find me on X, aka Twitter, at Vanguard Comic, and you can read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com.
Nice. You can find me on social media at Jester Diablo. Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
to the
Matt.
one and only Matt Strott.
Happy to be here.
And is your comic available yet, dude?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm on X as Messy Comics, 1S, and soon hopefully have the comic on Amazon.
Okay.
Awesome.
I just went through the process of the KDP publishing. The proof is supposed to arrive today, and hopefully everything's okay, and then I could just go live with it on Amazon.
I'm
fantastic.
very proud that I've got a bootleg comic of it. Do you remember you did me like a couple of the pages hadn't been coloured yet? Yeah, I'm very proud of that one, man. I'm keeping that one.
I severely underestimated how long it was going to take to finish, and I thought I'd have it done in September, and I was nowhere close. So I just printed up what I had. So
me and Matt,
awesome,
if
man.
people haven't listened previously, me, Matt, and Cliff wandered the halls of Baltimore and then haunted the no-brow table at SPX.
I'd also like to say that I think the Amazon direct publishing might be a good route for a lot of artists.
Right.
Me, as a US creator, a lot of people I know in comics are UK, and I could not wrap my head around how I was going to get the book to you guys at a reasonable rate that people would want to pay. So Amazon solves that. I don't have to pay anything to have it produced. I don't have to worry about anything on distribution. I don't make as much money, but I wasn't going to make money anyway. So I'd rather have people get the comic. So
I know Millsverse used that as well. I was speaking to Lisa Mills about it. She speaks very highly of it.
And it was super easy to set up. So far, so good. I can't wait to see the print and hopefully get it in actual physical.
So any day now, the link's going to go up.
Hope so. Yeah.
Do you want to give us the pitch? What it's about? Quickly.
Oh yeah. That was actually difficult for me. I didn't think I'd have to write the thing, but obviously I did. So for what I wrote on the description on Amazon is, at the bottom of the Hudson, life can be lonely. It can be even lonelier for a monster shrimp named Prawn. That is until a celebrity lookalike knocks at his door wanting a sample of his DNA. Try as he might to make friends with his uninvited guest, an inevitable struggle ensues, and Prawn is forced to take a trip to the Big Apple. Will he find love, wreak havoc, steal a car, or just chip a tooth? One thing is for sure, what this kaiju-sized shrimp lacks in brains, he makes up for in heart. Prawn Jumbo Shrimp is an oxymoron of epic proportions. If you love dad jokes, bad wordplay, absurdist humor, and massive explosions, Prawn in 60 seconds has all this and more. Catch all the action in this shrimply huge 36-page debut issue of Prawn the Jumbo Shrimp. Prawn in 60 seconds.
He does kind of find love, doesn't he? I won't spoil it. Yeah, baby.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a trilogy. That's gonna.
Fantastic!
amazing. And all those.
It's great, man. We love it.
All those descriptors are words that every single one of our listeners like to hear. So it's an awesome comic, man. And
it's great. Love it.
Yeah.
And these days are like stupid postal costs. That's the wise move, I think.
Yeah.
It was so insane. I could not figure out how to crack that nut. You know, it's like so Amazon. Thankfully, as much as I hate them, I'm going to use them.
Yeah. So as soon as it goes
live, let's use and abuse them.
Yeah. So as soon as it goes live, we shall be telling you, lovely people at home. And while you look forward to that, hopefully you've got plenty of comics to add to your wish list, etc. And wherever you are in the world, we hope you're happy, healthy, doing okay, making lots of comics that you like reading, and reading lots of comics and telling other people about it. And I guess without further ado, we've had so much fun now. I'm exhausted. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
But drained.
Dan, Tony, Matt, and myself at the ACP HQ, have a brilliant week, everyone. Stay safe out there, and as always, well, what should our lovely listeners do?
Stay awesome.
Stay awesome.
You can't see it, but like they put a bit of motion in it. They really get into it. It's lovely to see. And I'll be seeing it next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Why am I waving?